A leaderboard for the game Mobius Online shows the player, 7, in the undisputed first-place position, a godlike existence revered by all and the strongest ruler in history who never knew defeat. He reflects that his entire life's achievements were tied to being the world's #1 ranked player in the fully immersive Vermork, Mobius Online. All of that was now just history. His main character, 7, was recently hacked and completely deleted. The deletion was total, affecting not just his own data but all backups as well, and he was not alone. 3,000 other high-ranking players were also harmed. News reports revealed that the culprit was another high-ranking player who was arrested, with the motive being cited as simple envy. He knew it could not have been a careless act. Hacking and deleting the data of 3,000 players would require an aberrant level of determination. Following the incident, the Mobius Online administrators announced that they were unable to restore any of the affected characters, offering only a minor promotion on fees for creating a new one. In a fit of rage, he smashes his virtual reality headset against the wall. No matter how many times players inquired or protested at the head office, the company's response remained unchanged. Despair sets in as he realizes his #1 status is gone forever, leaving him without the will to do anything as sighs escape him. He lies on his bed, knowing he cannot remain in distress forever. A grim smile spreads across his face as he makes a decision. He resolves to die. Suddenly, he finds himself standing in a bustling medieval city, utterly confused. He recognizes the location as Vinceton Main Street, the royal capital in the Kingdom of Castall, and wonders if this is Mobius Online. A young woman shouts at him for blocking the way to her grocery store, ICC, making him wonder when he logged in. He identifies her as Ice John, the store's poster girl, but he's never heard her use lines of dialogue like these and questions if an update occurred while he was away. Her demeanor suddenly softens and she blushes, shyly asking if he had business with her store. He finds her sudden change incredibly cute, thinking that if this is an update, it's a godly one, while she reacts with flustered embarrassment. He speculates that a rapport system must have been implemented while he was gone to explain her magnificent behavior. A thought strikes him. This character isn't 7, but another one entirely, named Second. He recalls that Second is an alt he created at the same time as his main, a mule character with 0 experience points that he has never trained. Feeling it's hopeless to start Mobius Online all over again, he decides to quickly log out. He tries to access the menu but realizes he can't log out or even open the settings screen. He panics, wondering if the game bugged out and if he should press the emergency stop button before a chilling memory returns to him. He remembers that he has already died, which must be why he is now inside Mobius Online, his own personal afterlife. He recalls his pathetic last words, a heartfelt wish that he could have been born into the world of Mobion instead of the real world. Pinching his cheek, he feels a sharp pain and wonders if it's possible his final wish actually came true. If Icejohn's un-NPC-like behavior and his inability to log out are part of the same phenomenon, he can accept it, but this would mean something unbelievable. He was reborn in a game world. Overcome with pure ecstasy, he thanks whatever force brought him here, screaming that this is the best possible outcome. He dances like a madman in the street for nearly an hour, feeling thousands of times happier than when he first seized the #1 rank, until a guard grabs him from behind and places him under arrest. The armored guards confirm with a nervous Icejohn that he is the one causing the disturbance. She tells them he was causing a ruckus in front of her store and asks them to please take him away. He finds himself at the station for the 3rd Chivalric Order of the Kingdom of Castall. A guard demands to know why he was behaving in such a manner. He meekly explains that he just got a little excited. He is brought into an interrogation room, recognizing the 3rd Chivalric Order as the game's equivalent of the police, where a female knight begins to question him, assuming from his appearance that he is a noble. He notes that she is a beautiful and dignified knight, an NPC he has never seen before, and wonders if she is exclusive to this new version of the world. The knight passionately declares that crime is evil and will be judged, stating that noble rights hold no weight with the 3rd Chivalric Order, whose duty is to protect citizens. Convinced he is a corrupt noble, she dismisses his denial and demands he confess his schemes, refusing to be reasoned with. As she slams her fist on the table and draws her weapon, he recoils in shock. He quickly surrenders, yelling that he will talk, and she smugly comments that he should have done so from the beginning. She demands his name and occupation, and when he introduces himself as Second, an adventurer, she immediately calls him a liar. He realizes his expensive, well-tailored clothes, rare items he put on the mule character to make it look nice, are the reason he's being mistaken for a noble, which is seriously bad news. He recalls the lore about the friction between the lower divisions of the Third Chivalric Order and the nobles they felt were corrupt, placing him in the crosshairs of this constable overflowing with a sense of justice. Her sense of justice, judging by her appearance, is far greater than that of an average person. As she screams at him to spit out what he's scheming, he panics, realizing he has nothing to prove his status. Another, older guard suddenly enters the room and strikes the female knight, Sylvia, on the head, calling her a bloody dimwit. The senior guard apologizes for his subordinate's impoliteness and takes over the questioning, asking for Second's social status and intentions with brevity, as he is suspected of deliberately obstructing business. He introduces himself as Second, a 17-year-old adventurer, using the age he entered for the character's status rather than his real age of 28. The guard recounts the witness reports of him dancing and making strange sounds, and asks for his intent, to which Second can only apologize and say he's zoned out with no intention of causing trouble. The situation makes him feel insanely pathetic, as it fully dawns on him that he is now part of a proper society. The guard confirms that he is claiming he did not deliberately obstruct business, to which he meekly agrees. After compensating the grocery store, ICC, he is released, bowing and apologizing as the owner tells him to buy something next time. He paid 150,000 CL in compensation, which makes him question how this society's economy functions. That amount of money was barely enough to buy starter-level armor in the game he knew, yet he currently possesses over 2 billion CL. The prices are clearly different from the Mob Ion he knew, and the full-body armor he bought for his character, which was mistaken for a noble's attire, is now a mystery in terms of its value, prompting him to investigate the currency immediately. He decides the best way to figure out the value of money is to check the price of a meal or a night's stay, spotting a nearby inn with a bar on the first floor. He enters and asks the receptionist how much a room for the night costs, repeating himself when she seems distracted. The receptionist fumbles her words, apologizing profusely, and he notes her suspicious reaction is similar to how Ice John acted when they first met. She informs him a room is 4,000 CL, or 7,000 CL with 2 meals, which he realizes is incredibly cheap, meaning his armor must be insanely high class. He books 5 nights without meals. The receptionist hands him the key, her hands trembling as she blushes. As their hands touch, she becomes even more flustered, and he wonders about the strange feeling this interaction gives him. He heads down to the inn's bustling bar area. As he takes a seat, he notices the other patrons are looking at him. Taking a drink, he understands why he's drawing so much attention, especially the passionate gazes from the girls in the room. He sticks out like a sore thumb. He realizes the reason is his avatar, which he configured using a limited-time premium option to be exceptionally beautiful. While a handsome character in an online game would be ignored, in a real world it's an entirely different story, and a pleasant shiver runs down his spine as a smile escapes him. In this supreme world, he believes his efforts will no longer be futile. He recalls all the voices from his past telling him that playing games was pointless, that he needed to return to reality, work, and go to school. But this is a world where all those reasonable arguments and the deep dissatisfaction in his heart are completely nullified. He covers his face and begins to laugh softly. His soft laughter erupts into a full-throated, joyous roar. A confident grin spreads across his face. He has decided. He is going to become the #1 in the world all over again. A young man sits up in bed, clutching his head in pain. He realizes he got too carried away celebrating his reincarnation into a parallel world the night before, and the unaccustomed alcohol has given him a hangover. Getting out of bed, he steadies himself and acknowledges that this place is no longer a game. This place is now his reality, and his first order of business is to acquire the many necessary skills that exist in Mob Ion, which are essential for him to obtain. The nature of Mob Ion is built primarily upon an experience point system. His character, Second, is at level 1, and he knows that to learn skills and raise stats, earning experience must come first. Acquiring experience is simple. One must either defeat monsters or accomplish quests. Skills, which span fighting techniques, magic, and crafts, have established rankings that also require experience points to raise, starting from 16th class up to 1st class, then 1st grade to 9th grade, and finally the special rank of title. A character's stats also require a ton of experience to increase, and the way they grow is determined by the growth type set during character creation. While ordering a meal at the inn, he remembers to check his own character's status. He opens his menu and confirms what he already suspected. The growth type for his character, 2nd, is the same all-rounder type as his original character, 7. The all-rounder type causes all stats to grow equally without deviation, which is a double-edged sword. It's suited for becoming number 1 in the world, but it also makes one a jack of all trades and master of none. The inn's receptionist brings him his food with a cheerful apology for the wait. He reflects that being an all-rounder is overwhelmingly good because, unlike a specialized type with uneven stats, it allows one to flawlessly raise all stats at once. The trade-off, however, is that the initial development for an all-rounder is considerably more intense than for any other growth type. Knowing this, he decides he has no choice but to use a specific method for leveling and heads toward a potion specialty store. He enters with a bright smile and asks the shopkeeper for as many bottles of Detoxify, Dispel, Recovery High Potion Plus as they have in stock. The elderly shopkeeper and his assistant are left speechless by the request. A different clerk informs him that such a large purchase would cost an astonishing amount of money, to which 2nd asks exactly how many they have, and the shopkeeper nervously replies that they have almost 630. Without hesitation, he declares that he will take all of them. The 2-step strengthened high potions, which have detoxifying, dispelling, and recovery effects, cost 120,000 CL each, bringing the total for 630 bottles to 75,600,000 CL. The shopkeeper brings out the massive pile of potions, and 2nd pays for them all in cash, crams them into his inventory, and then asks them to please restock with almost 9,000 more for him. He wonders what he could possibly be planning to do with so many high-class potions. The plan is to use what was known in Mabion as the DK tactic, a cheat tier method for earning starting experience. This tactic was inspired by a trick from an old 8-bit game called Dinosaur Quest, where one defeats enemies with high evasion by throwing fixed damage items at them. The secret is that these recovery potions also have the effect of dealing a fixed amount of damage to undead enemies. Each bottle of Detoxify, Dispel, Recovery High Potion Plus that he just purchased deals a fixed 1,200 damage to any undead creature. This damage is just enough to destroy an intermediate-level undead monster called the Viper Zombie, which gives a relatively juicy amount of experience. Therefore, by throwing these potions at the Viper Zombies, anyone, even a complete beginner or a small child, can easily annihilate them. He notes a woman with a 3-year-old child, reflecting that despite its ease, this method was typically only used by high-class players to level up their alternate characters. That's because the method costs an insane amount of money. To earn a sufficient amount of experience, a player would need at least 10,000 of these potions, for a total cost of 1.2 billion CL. The only people capable of preparing that kind of money without batting an eye were those who already had a powerful main character to fund them. He arrives at a stable, knowing that while the DK tactic is an exceedingly superior way to gain experience at the start, its utility quickly fades. It is a method strictly for the beginning stages of a character's journey and is no longer viable once a player reaches the intermediate level. Inside the stable, he chooses a black horse and declares that from this day forward, its name will be 7th Tayo. A sly grin crosses his face as he thinks about having to resort to this particular strategy. He rides his new horse at a gallop across the open plains outside the city. After riding for nearly 2 hours, he approaches a well-known hunting ground located in a large cave behind a mine. He enters the vast cave and finds that there isn't a single soul there. He considers the possibility that the DK tactic simply hasn't been discovered in this world yet. He also speculates that perhaps the potions are too expensive for anyone to try, or that there aren't many beginners around, but the fact that no one is here means he can hunt as much as he wants. Hearing a noise in the darkness, he turns and spots his targets. A monstrous viper zombie slithers out from the rocks. He grimaces in disgust, noting that seeing them in reality is 100 times more revolting than seeing them in a game. Steeling himself, he decides to get this done quickly and head back. He begins throwing his potions, each one striking a viper zombie and inflicting exactly 1,200 damage in a flash of light. As the undead creatures dissolve into nothing, a pleased smile spreads across his face. The feeling of gaining so much experience is somehow nice. The process is a simple loop. After purging one hunting ground, he moves to the next, and by the time he returns to the first, the monsters will have respawned for him to purge once more. He continues throwing potions non-stop until all 630 bottles are gone, earning a passable amount of experience that will allow him to gather necessary skills and raise his skill rank. Looking up at the mountains, he sees that the sun has set. He rides 7th Tayo back towards the royal capital under the light of the evening street lamps. Upon reaching the city gates, he thinks only of eating a meal, getting drunk, taking a bath, and sleeping, but a guard orders him to halt. The person who stopped him is the female knight from the day before, who aggressively demands to know who he is. He wearily recognizes the dense yet beautiful knight as Sylvia. He thanks her for the other day, but she eyes him with suspicion, identifying him as the second punk from yesterday and questioning what he's doing out so late. He explains that he was at the large cave behind the mines to earn experience, which leaves her completely baffled. Her eyes narrow with distrust. She tells him he should keep his lies realistic, as she doesn't understand why he would deliberately go to such a dangerous place just to defeat monsters. He cheerfully replies that he thought the viper zombies there were rather delicious, a term she doesn't understand. She concludes that he must not have any common sense. Finding her irritating, he listens as she continues, saying that perhaps his brain has a screw missing. He suddenly realizes she referred to the hunting ground as dangerous and asks if he can pose a question to her. He asks if there are 21 dungeons in the world of Mabayan, recalling that in the game, these locations were considered paradises for leveling. Players in the game had pooled their intel and tried countless strategies to find ways to easily explore each of these dungeons. Sylvia looks at him, confused, and corrects him, stating that there are 19 dungeons, not 21. He then asks how many of those 19 are currently being raided, to which she replies with a hint of confusion. 13, obviously, she states, after which he thanks her and asks for permission to leave, which she grants with a dismissive umph. He now understands everything. In this world, death is permanent, which means people aren't willing to risk their lives thousands of times to acquire the kind of deep game intelligence he already possesses. With this massive advantage, he realizes he might be able to reach the rank of number 1 in the world far earlier than he ever expected. The next morning, Second knows that having earned a certain amount of experience, his next destination is clear. He walks towards a large, imposing building. He stands inside the Grand Royal Library, knowing that this place is the first step toward becoming number 1 because of its connection to Mobian's skill acquisition system. Within the library, he reflects that there are primarily 2 conditions for acquiring skills in Mabon, the first of which is to read skill books. And here in the Grand Royal Library, there are multitudes of those skill books available. A female librarian with glasses approaches and asks what he is looking for, but he says he is fine, distracted for a moment by her figure. He turns his attention back to the towering aisles of books. Knowing the skill books he needs should be around here, he plans to move through the bookshelves quickly, as simply flipping through the pages is enough to fulfill the reading condition. He finds the books he seeks, the fundamental skills for swordsmanship and archery, arts, as well as the 4 elemental books for the Opo-Opo form in sorcery. A diagram illustrates the skill system, showing combat type, major skills, like swordsmanship and archery, each of which contains 9 minor skills, named after shogi pieces, such as pawn, spear, and knight. He plans to acquire 4 skills from the library, the pawn and spear, minor skills for both the swordsmanship and archery major skills. Having acquired the physical combat skills without any difficulty, his next objective is sorcery. A chart explains the sorcery system, which is divided into 4 elements: fire, water, wind, and earth, and each element has 5 forms, from the basic Opo-Opo form to the advanced 5th form. He finds that the grimoires in the library are the same as they were in the game, containing only the 4 elemental Opo-Opo forms, and assumes the more advanced books must be found at the Royal School of Magic or through difficult quests. After finishing the Opo-Opo form grimoires, he has read all the fundamental skill books he wanted to learn and decides to head back. He gives the nearby librarian a final glance as he prepares to leave. Leaving the building, he reflects that his trip to the library was an abundant harvest, his eye glowing with a newfound power. He then lays out his following plans, deciding to train in a specific order: archery, then swordsmanship, then sorcery, and finally conjuration. His first step is to use the long-range fire of archery to safely earn experience, followed by solidifying his position with the effective and easy-to-use swordsmanship. The third step is to prepare high firepower sorcery as a trump card for harder enemies, with the 4th skill being conjuration. He recalls that when he created his alt character, Second, the limited time avatar bundle he purchased included a special item. That item was a premium spirit ticket, which immensely raises the likelihood of summoning a rare spirit, giving him every reason to improve his conjuration skill. However, conjuration has limits as a primary means of battle and is strictly an auxiliary skill, so it's best to raise it only after archery, swordsmanship, and sorcery have been improved to a certain extent. With his plan decided, he finds a weapon shop and prepares to allocate the experience points he's earned to raise the ranks of his newly acquired skills. He distributes his experience points carefully. Archery skills are raised to a borderline amount just to be usable, the Opo-Opo form of sorcery is raised to 5th class to reduce its casting time, and pawn swordsmanship is given enough to serve as insurance in close-quarters combat. Having run out of experience points to distribute, he settles on these ranks for now, knowing he can always return to the Grand Royal Library to acquire more fundamental skills later if needed. He considers the other necessary skills for archery, which include not just pawn and spear, but also knight, silver general, gold general, bishop, and castle. Each of these minor skills grants a special ability: precise shot for knight, a powerful solo strike for silver general, a spread strike with knockback for gold general, a powerful pierce strike for bishop, and the extremely powerful solo strike for castle archery. He knows that just by learning these skills, the number of tactics available to him would increase dramatically, with knight, gold general, and castle archery being the most necessary of all. To learn these skills, however, he must fulfill the other condition for skill acquisition in Mabayon, which is different from reading fundamental skill books, so he enters a weapon shop and requests a longbow. That second condition is the completion of skill quests, though he notes that one doesn't need to formally accept a quest to fulfill the acquisition conditions. He quickly accomplishes the requirements, learning knight archery by killing a monster on horseback and silver general archery by killing 20 monsters in a row with a single shot each. He then learns gold general archery by fulfilling its condition to kill 10 monsters in a row within 3 meters. Next is bishop archery, a tedious skill that requires fulfilling 2 conditions: killing 5 monsters simultaneously with spear archery, and killing 2 monsters simultaneously from at least 25 meters away using a combination of spear archery and knight archery. Last but not least is castle archery, the most tedious yet most powerful amplified strike skill. It is an extraordinarily practical single-strike skill that exerts immense firepower, starting at 250% at its base 16th class and scaling up to an astounding 600% at the 9th grade. However, its acquisition conditions are so tedious that it ranks among the worst 10 in the entire game, even when combining all other tedious skills together. The first 2 conditions are to kill 1,000 monsters using silver general archery, and to land 500 critical hits using the same skill. As he eats lunch, he considers these 2 conditions to be no big deal, as they will naturally be fulfilled over time. The real problem is the last condition. The final, brutal requirement is to kill 3 monsters in a row that have already drained at least 50% of another player's HP, with each kill being a single shot from at least 5 meters away using a combination of knight archery and silver general archery. Just thinking about it is tedious and a massive pain. If he were to mess up the sequence even once, he would have to start all over again, making the task downright hellish. If this were still an online game, he could easily ask some friends to act as bait, letting their HP drop to 50% to complete the quest. But this is the real world now, and a situation where one's HP is drained by 50% is life-threatening, making it futile to even ask someone for help. He considers trying to incidentally create such a situation 3 times, but immediately dismisses the idea as even more futile. Despite the difficulty, he wants castle archery, no matter what, as it's an absolutely indispensable skill, so he resolves to accept the situation and find another way. He decides to put the final condition on hold, focusing on the first 2 requirements of 1,000 kills and 500 criticals with silver general, and simply await an opportunity for the rest. That opportunity arrived in an unexpected way. A week has passed since his reincarnation into this world. During that time, he has taken full advantage of the DK tactic and has raised his other skill ranks nicely. As he rides through a snowy field, he decides it's time to start training his swordsmanship, but his thoughts are interrupted by a distant scream. He discovers a group of armored men in a forest, one of whom is shouting for the others to retreat as he tries to cut a path. Hidden in the bushes, he sees what they are fighting. They are surrounded by monstrous creatures he identifies as scarlet mantises. His eyes widen in shock at the brutal scene before him. The air is filled with the sounds of clanging metal, coarse breathing, fear, screams, and the smell of soil and trickling blood. This visceral, terrifying sight was something he had never seen in the Mobius Online he knew. He assesses the battlefield, 5 people lie motionless on the ground, and the remaining 5 have formed a defensive circle but will surely be tormented and killed if nothing changes. A cold, calculating thought crosses his mind. With 5 people in danger, he might be able to learn castle archery this way. He considers waiting until their HP is drained to have more certainty of fulfilling the quest condition. A savage grin begins to form on his face. But then he catches himself, seeing a fallen warrior and realizing that his thought to use them to learn castle archery isn't right. He looks at the face of a dead man, bloodied and eyes wide with terror, and it hits him. People are dying, and they are not players, they are people. He realizes they are the same as him, people who risked their lives to accomplish something, only to lose it all, and now they are about to lose everything again. He decides that he cannot just let this slide. He draws his bow, knocking an arrow with grim determination. Such despair is intolerable to him, and he steps out from the trees, yelling for the surviving men to get down. The armored men look back in shock. As the mantises close in, he shouts again for them to get down, and they obey. He unleashes a powerful spear archery shot that tears through the air. The arrow pierces through one scarlet mantis and continues into another, their bodies exploding from the force. The powerful shot leaves a trail of smoke and disintegrating monster parts in its wake. The surviving warriors look on in stunned silence at the sudden intervention. He stands calmly, his bow still aimed, ready for the next shot. The surviving knights catch their breath in the aftermath of the battle. One of them looks up in awe at their savior. The knight reflects on the figure who gallantly ran in during their predicament. His fearless posture reminds the knight of the legendary world's number 1. That knight's first impression of him, however, had been absolutely terrible. She had thought he was just a young, spoiled noble boy who lacked common sense and had never known hardship. And yet, she now questions her judgment. She marvels at the intense learning he must have accumulated to obliterate 6 scarlet mantises in under 20 seconds using only an ordinary longbow and the improbable power of archery. She contrasts his strength with her own journey, having aspired to the path of the knight since she was a young girl with only a single blade in hand. Her efforts felt futile, her family ridiculed her for lacking talent with the sword, and the third chivalric order she finally joined was spectacularly lax and corrupt. Her strength was never recognized, and her superiors just saw her as a little girl annoying them with talk of justice, a justice she felt powerless to enforce. She despises the wretched dogs in power who pressure her whenever she exposes a noble's injustice, and even now, with comrades dead, the rotten upper echelons are trying to recruit their lifesaver, Second. She clenches her gauntlet, questioning if this corrupt chivalric order is truly the image of a knight she once yearned for. Wrapped in a towel after bathing, she feels as if she has already lost her way. The narrative shifts to Second, who has been summoned by a high-ranking member of the chivalric order, who asks if he intends to join the Adventurers Guild. Second is surprised, as he expected thanks for his help in the fight, but the old man's first words are a recruitment offer for the Adventurers Guild. The man apologizes for rushing things and explains he heard Second was an adventurer but was not affiliated with any guild. Second confirms this is true, stating that he sees no reason to join them. He recalls from the lore of Mabayon that the Kingdom of Castal's Adventurers Guild is an organization that coordinates monster subjugation requests. In reality, however, it is a dirty organization that exposes adventurers' personal information to the kingdom to allow for their unilateral control, a fact he knows from the game's stories. He respectfully declines the offer, explaining that he is not worried about money and does not like being tied down by organizations. The old man considers this with a troubled expression. When Second asks what is on his mind, the man simply says it is nothing. The man then explains that exceptional freelance adventurers like Second are highly sought after by the privileged, and the recent incident with the mantises made his strength plain for all to see. Second understands the implication. The Adventurers Guild would offer him protection from those who might try to recruit him by force. He finds this highly suspicious. The only witnesses at the scene were from the Third Chivalric Order, making him wonder why they are pushing so hard for him to join the guild. Feeling that affiliation would only hold him back from becoming the world's number 1, he once again states that he will refrain from joining. The old man looks disappointed but says he understands. He then changes tactics, declaring that in that case, he will have Sylvia accompany Second, allowing the Third Chivalric Order to keep tabs on him to a degree. The man continues, noting that he is not sure how to convince a noble like Second to join, but Sylvia is famous in the royal capital for being strict against nobles and would keep tabs on him reasonably well. Second recognizes the dreadful nature of the old man's pursuit, Endorsing Sylvia for this role is not what it seems, and he does not know their true objective. He quickly deduces the truth. Sylvia, with her strict anti-noble stance, is a thorn in the side of the corrupt upper echelon of the chivalric order, who are tied to the nobles, meaning they are looking for a way to demote her. Realizing this is an extremely good proposal for him. Like a duck arriving with a scallion, he sees a unique chance to snatch a powerful female knight as a comrade for free. He asks how long she would be required to stay with him. The old man says he should ask her himself and calls for Sylvia to enter. Sylvia appears, now dressed in simple clothes instead of her armor. Second's eyes widen for a moment as she enters the room. The commander informs Sylvia that from now on, she will be responsible for being Second's escort, and the term of her service will be decided by their mutual opinions. Her surprised expression is inevitable. Second knows this is an actual demotion. The commander's claim that he would respect Sylvia's opinion is a lie. It implies that a single word from Second could decide her term, confirming how negatively the chivalric order views her. Sylvia agrees to the assignment, and Second, flustered for a moment, confirms as well. Seizing the opportunity, Second suggests a term of 2 years, calculating that this is more than enough time to pursue the world's #1 position. The commander agrees to the terms. And just like that, the female knight Sylvia became his escort. She understands that this is a demotion, a way for the chivalric order to get rid of a deadweight. Later that day, Second and Sylvia sit at a tavern. Sylvia reflects on her past as the second daughter of the Virginian knightly family. She was considered a failure for her lack of talent with the sword, scorned by her family despite her dream of becoming a knight. Second interrupts her thoughts, asking if they can make a deal. She becomes flustered, thinking he is suggesting she was ordered to seduce him into joining the chivalric order. The sudden offer leaves her confused, as too many shocking things have happened that day for her to comprehend his meaning. Despite her confusion, she ends up agreeing to at least hear what he has to say. At that moment, she was unaware that this deal would greatly change the course of her life forever. He tells her that he is sure she wants to work proudly as a knight, and that he wants to help her. Having always been focused on the sword, she had never had time for love, but hearing him call her name directly while drinking mead makes her heart skip a beat. He tells her that if she is sick of her current situation, she should build the resolve to quit the Third Chivalric Order once and for all. He then adds, "Would you go out with me?" causing her to blush and stare in shock. She erupts in a panicked shout, completely misunderstanding his words. As she stammers in embarrassment, he tells her to calm down, reminding her that he said he was making a deal. She collects herself, realizing this is a deal and not a romantic proposal at all. He explains that he assumes she cannot stand yielding to wicked authorities, and to stand against them, she needs adequate power, which he has the means to provide. She admits that for 13 years, since she was 4 years old, she has been training with the sword. Yet in all that time, she has not carried out a single act of justice. Second watches her as she stands, her back turned to him. He apologizes for speaking bluntly but suggests that if she lacks talent for the sword, she should simply try something else, like a spear or a bow. She whirls on him in anger, yelling that he has no idea how much she has struggled up until now. After a moment, her anger subsides, and she admits that he is right. She has grown stubborn, continuing to train with the sword even though people keep telling her she lacks the talent for it. Her ideal of a knight is a champion of justice who wears armor, wields a sword, rides a horse, and gallantly runs enduring predicaments. She wanted to become a prominent knight, a champion of justice who would never yield to evil. Tears well up in her eyes as she realizes how pitiful her situation has become. He tells her to stop arbitrarily forcing her aspirations into such a narrow view. Any weapon can be used, as the important part is being a champion who comes running in during a predicament. His words strike a chord with her. She realizes he is right and that there is no need to be obsessed with her appearance, only with the act of gallantly running in during a crisis. The image of Second standing fearlessly on the battlefield flashes in her mind. With newfound resolve, she declares that she has decided she will go out with him. He responds with a simple, knowing, "Aha." She looks at him, slightly confused by his calm demeanor. Later, she explains that Second shared his dream of becoming the world's #1, no matter what, prompting her to share her own dream in turn. His dream was vague, astonishing, and laughable, but he spoke of it with the sparkling eyes and smile of a little boy. She feels that this is the first time she has experienced such a refreshing night, and that her future has brightened. She wants to go with him to help, confident that interesting things will happen. Back in his own room, Second sits on his bed, a low chuckle escaping his lips. his chuckle builds into a full-blown, triumphant laugh. He marvels at how well his plan worked out, as the receptionist downstairs hears him laughing again. He admits to himself that getting a heartbroken girl drunk and winning her heart was an extremely dirty tactic, but he is sure it will be for her sake as well. He theorizes that Sylvia, being completely helpless with a sword after 13 years of training, must have a growth type aligned with dexterity or intelligence, meaning she has talent in archery or sorcery. A notification appears in his mind. Sylvia has become a comrade. He knows that getting a comrade is incredibly significant, as it will shoot up his security in battle, especially after getting her to sever her ties with the troublesome chivalric order. He reflects on all the things he accomplished that day. It was as if he killed 4 birds with 1 stone. He realizes that the Scarlet Mantises weren't significant monsters, and considering his current status, it would have been weird for him not to win, making the entire situation the perfect opportunity. A system notification confirms, "You have learned a new skill, Castle Archery." Because of the battle, he managed to learn the skill he had been longing for as well. Lying in bed, he smiles, thinking that the days are going to be fun starting tomorrow. He laughs to himself as he plans for the future. First will be Sylvia's training, getting her the necessary skills, and then he wants to head into dungeons to earn EXP and hunt for rare items. The inn receptionist hears his manic laughter once again, wondering what is wrong with him. A wide-eyed Sylvia questions the term magic archery. Second explains that he thinks a magic archer, a class specializing in sorcery and archery, would probably suit her best. She has never heard of such a class, but Second knows her stats confirm it. With her unnaturally high dex and INT, she is clearly a magic archer type. When she confirms she knows of no skills that combine sorcery and archery, he is concerned, as it was a popular job in Mabayon and he wonders if it doesn't exist in this world. He dismisses her lack of knowledge, stating that the class does exist and that she will be aiming to become one. He lays out his plan. First, they will go to the library for her to acquire the fundamental skills for archery, and then they will head to the forest for her to assist him in acquiring his necessary swordsmanship skills, leaving Sylvia confused. He feels as though he is teaching a newbie the basics of Mabayon and simply tells her to follow him. Sylvia stares at him with a quizzical expression. A moment later, a blush spreads across her face as she smiles and agrees to his plan. Her agreement turns to shocked stammering after he finishes explaining the details. She is dumbfounded that he knows the acquisition methods for bishop and castle archery, exclaiming that such intel is a hidden fact that nobles have kept to themselves for generations. She warns him that nobles would have him tortured to death for knowing such things, which makes Second realize that the hoarding of knowledge and privileges is why the average level in this world is so low. Sylvia panics, realizing that using such advanced archery skills would get her exposed instantly, but he calmly tells her to simply not use them in public. Afterwards, he brought an incessantly amazed Sylvia to the forest, where she acquired Knight Archery, Silver General Archery, Gold General Archery, and Bishop Archery, without difficulty. She feels she has experienced a lifetime's worth of surprises already, but Second tells her with a sly smile that it is still too early to be surprised. In the Viper Zombie Cave, he asks how she thinks he raises his EXP and transfers 999 high potions to her, leaving her shocked at the sheer number of expensive items. She crudely jokes about where she's supposed to put them all, to which he replies that he never said that. He explains that they will use the potions to perform the DK tactic, and her subsequent shout of shock is the loudest one she has let out all day. After their training, he asks Sylvia if she wants to learn castle archery. She is hesitant but agrees, so he announces that they will go to a dungeon. They arrive at Royce, a second rank or intermediate dungeon. Dungeons are separated into 3 ranks, with third being for beginners and first for experts. He explains that his primary goal is to acquire the Flame Wolf's Bow, a rare, fire elemental longbow dropped by the dungeon's boss, which he wants no matter what. The greater goal, however, and the main one for this trip, is for Sylvia to acquire Castle Archery, as the ideal monsters to fulfill its requirements appear in this dungeon. Simply put, their objective is to search for rare drops while fulfilling the skill acquisition requirements together. As they proceed, Sylvia spots their targets, and Second says he's found them. He tells her these are the monsters they came for and instructs her to defeat them using her Silver General skill, practicing combining it with Knight Archery as well. She draws her bow, taking aim. She lets an arrow fly, striking one of the beasts. The monster is hit squarely and dissolves into light. She stands in disbelief, amazed by the result. She turns to Second, blushing and stammering that she has suddenly become incredibly powerful. A stat sheet reveals the source of her new strength. Thanks to the DK tactic, her EXP skyrocketed, and her Knight and Silver General archery skills both reached the first grade. Second simply reminds her that he did promise to help her. She thanks him, her expression a mix of gratitude and admiration that he finds quite beautiful, a stark contrast to her usual demeanor. Afterwards, an uncontrollably excited Sylvia was in perfect condition and served as extremely helpful backup, constantly praising him. Her newfound zeal makes her declare that she's going to become a magic archer, forcing him to tell her to stop and calm down. Almost 6 hours after they entered the dungeon, they are down to the last requirement for Sylvia to acquire Castle Archery. They stop because their target monster has finally appeared. A group of massive trolls lumbers into view. The flaming troll is a large monster with exceptional attack power, but its shiny, smooth cranium is a very obvious weak spot. He sees 3 flaming trolls before him, a perfect setup, and calculates that a single headshot with Sylvia's first-grade Silver General archery should be enough to take one down. He instructs her to use a combination of Knight and Silver General to fire at their heads on his signal, and when she asks what he plans to do, he replies that he is going to embrace the inevitable and warns her not to lose her cool no matter what. He confirms his HP is full, and his VIT should be enough to withstand 3 critical hits from the trolls. Although he knows this is a necessary step for him to act as bait for the Castle Archery quest, he steels himself, admitting that it's seriously frightening. A troll's club smashes into him, and the unheard of pain makes him cough up blood as he is sent flying. His HP drops to 3744, and he realizes with dread that unlike in the game, there is no guarantee his shattered teeth will recover, making him question if this was a bad idea as Sylvia screams his name. He sees her waiting and tells himself it's not time yet. Another troll raises its club to strike. He lets out a yelp of fear. He forces himself to stand his ground, reminding himself that he is the world's #1 and will not show an unsightly side. His identity as the world's #1 is his life, his raison d'etre, a throne he will not give up to anyone. He repeats the mantra over and over, his face bloodied but his eyes filled with terrifying resolve. The second troll's attack lands, sending him crashing to the ground. His HP drops to 1640, well below the 50% threshold, and he knows he can take it. He struggles to get the words out, calling Sylvia's name and giving her the signal to fire. The last troll turns its attention from Second to Sylvia. She fires her bow with deadly precision. The arrow strikes the final troll directly in its weak spot, and as it falls, Second tells the monster it was a fool for underestimating them. After the battle is over, a crying Sylvia rushes to his side, scolding him for his reckless plan. Through her tears, she continues to call him a fool. He lies on the ground, beaten and bruised, but looks up at the sky with a faint smile. A system notification appears before Sylvia. You have learned a new skill, Castle Archery. Though she is amazed, he feels an uncanny satisfaction, glad from the depths of his heart that he was able to endure. He smiles, thinking that his new life will be filled with excitement now that he has acquired a comrade named Sylvia. After their previous ordeal, Second and Sylvia pull themselves together and advance deeper into Royce Dungeon to face the boss in the home of the Flame Wolves. The dungeon's boss, the Flame Wolf, is a powerful monster with the body of a large wolf wreathed in flames. Due to its flame barrier that makes it highly damage-resistant, everyone in Mobion judged it as a pain in the ass, but Second declares they are going to stunlock it. The main reason for this strategy is his past experience, where he managed to turn the formidable Flame Wolves into the equivalent of Trashtier's small fry through stunlocking. He outlines the strategy. He will first attack with Bishop Archery, and when the Flame Wolf runs for him, he will repel it with Gold General Archery. Afterwards, Sylvia will attack with her Bishop Archery, and when the wolf rushes towards her, she will repel it with Gold General, after which they will rinse and repeat the process. Sylvia questions if such a simple method will work, but Second assures her it is the safest method, a famous technique for 2 or more people called the ultimate Gold Bishop Stun. And so, by following this method, the Flame Wolf died. 3 weeks later, after venturing into Royce Dungeon every day and killing over 100 Flame Wolves, the rare Flame Wolf's bow finally drops. Sylvia expresses her excitement that Second will now be even more powerful, but he shocks her by stating that the bow is hers. He hands her the weapon, explaining that since she is going to become a magic archer, it's not a mistake for her to use this for the time being. She asks if it's really okay for her to have such a fine bow, and he confirms it is, adding that he will be shifting his focus to sorcery and has no plans to use it himself. She accepts the gift, but then stops him, asking what he just muttered under his breath and accusing him of calling her a motor-mouth numbskull. She is annoyed that he never mentioned he was shifting to sorcery, and he apologizes for not telling her. She reflects on his rapid progression from archery to swordsmanship and now to sorcery, realizing his dream of becoming #1 in the world might not be a pipe dream after all, as he tells her he needs to consult with her about what's next. He asks if she has any connections to the Royal Academy of Magic. He reminds her that she is the second daughter of the Noble Knight Order of Virginia and asks if she has any connections that could help them. He explains that learning sorcery skills involves reading grimoires, and while the basic Opo-Opo form can be found in libraries, the more advanced Raptor and Coral forms are fundamentally only found within academies of magic. Therefore, no matter what it takes, he must infiltrate an academy of magic to save time. While he could take the formal route of enrolling, he is not sure how much time that would take, and the Royal Academy of Magic is off-limits to anyone who isn't a teacher or student. He explains that he wants to leverage her connections to get permission to explore the academy for a short while, but she tells him it's impossible. She reveals that she has been abandoned by her father for not having any talent with the sword and can't imagine he would grant a request for such a useless daughter. He suggests she show her father her new capabilities, but she insists that he would still be strict with her even if she did. She believes her father, who distinguished himself in battle with a sword, would only see her use of a bow as her abandoning the sword and running away. Seeing that a frontal attack won't work, he decides he has no choice but to deceive Sylvia's father. He announces that he has a good idea, which gives Sylvia a tremendously bad vibe. He excitedly calls his plan the deception tactic and declares they will put it into action tomorrow, causing Sylvia to panic. The next day, at the Virginia family estate, Sylvia's father greets them. Second is internally panicking, wondering how the situation escalated so quickly. His plan had been simple: wear some rare clothes, act like a foreign aristocrat, and deceive Sylvia's father into writing them referral letters for the Academy of Magic. Now, however, it appears he has remarkably deceived Sylvia's father, Noirson, who seems to believe he is actual foreign royalty, compelling Second to consider telling the truth. He doesn't understand how this happened. Realizing he can no longer turn back, he decides to persist with the act and commands Noir to raise his head. He tells Noir that he is concealing his identity due to circumstances, and Noir swears he will not tell another soul, which makes Second realize his bluff is working. Second states he has come with 2 requests, and Noir agrees to whatever he wills. He starts with the trivial request of getting connected to the Royal Academy of Magic, and Noir immediately offers to write him a referral letter to transfer in as a first year. A long-term transfer isn't good, so Second clarifies he only needs a shorter stay to blaze through their grimoires, leading Noir to suggest he assume the form of a short-term exchange student. He thinks that's a good idea and considers the duration of the stay. Doubting a few days will be enough, he chooses a period of 2 weeks and asks for a detailed referral letter, which Noir agrees to provide before asking about the important request. Referring to himself as this lord, he declares he has taken a liking to Sylvia and her talent for archery and sorcery, asking for permission for her to travel with him. Noir immediately drops to one knee, addressing him as Your Highness, and says that if His Highness is fine with his undisciplined daughter, he may use her however he wishes. Second assures him that Sylvia's skill is world famous and that she should leave the chivalric order to accompany him. He adds that after her 2-year contract is over, he plans to request her for himself and would like Noir's support, to which Noir agrees with all due respect, promising to wait for praises of her flourishing service to arrive. A nervous Sylvia stands in the background. Second is confused by Noir's grand pronouncements but takes it as an okay. As they leave, Second tells Noir that his spirit is admirable and that he will never forget the Virginia family. Sylvia, completely overwhelmed, mutters that no matter how many hearts she has, it won't be enough to deal with being with Second. Second feels a bit of remorse, reflecting that deceiving people isn't something one should do, but feels the drastic change of events is a little scary. A week passes after the deception tactic was used. Since then, he and Sylvia have been enjoying a perfect lifestyle, selling flame wolf pelts and earning experience points. They primarily earned experience from slime-type monsters deep within the slime forest, where rare slimes with juicy experience often appear. Their greatest achievement was getting an ultra-rare drop from a holy slime, the Recovery Sorcery Wand Med, an item with a 0.05% drop rate that allows anyone to use the Recovery Med spell. The wand is especially useful for healer-type characters, who gain a ++ effect that increases its power by 2.5x, allowing for the instant recovery of at least half an intermediate-level player's HP. The wand will save him a fortune on high-class potions and can even heal his broken back teeth, making it a powerful tool as they prepare to head to the Academy of Magic. Although neither he nor Sylvia are healer types and thus can't gain the ++ effect, being able to use Recovery Med unconditionally is a magnificent gift from the Holy Slime. And so, after biding their time earning items and experience, they finally arrive at the Royal Academy of Magic. A girl with glasses and a tall elf welcome them, stating that they have been expected. Second thanks the professors for coming out to pick them up. The elf, Kevin, asks if he can call him Second-kun, and Second introduces himself and Sylvia, stating they'll be there for 2 weeks. The girl introduces herself as the headmaster, Paula Memento, and Kevin as the homeroom teacher of the first-year Class A that Second will be entering. Paula informs them that they will be lodging in a house together, not separate dorms, and that Sylvia will also be in Class A. Second feels that for the time being, they seem to be fine and no one suspects them, but they will need to concentrate for the next 2 weeks. Kevin lays out the schedule for the day, a lesson in the morning, followed by a school tour in the afternoon. Second is thankful for the tour, planning to squeeze information about the grimoires out of his guide, but Kevin clarifies that a student from Class A will be giving the tour, not him. Professor Kevin leads them down a hallway and announces their arrival at Class A. Inside, the students look on with varied expressions of boredom and curiosity. Kevin addresses the class, announcing that 2 exchange students will be joining them for 2 weeks, and calls for Second and Sylvia to come in. Second introduces himself, claiming to be from an island country called Zipong. The female students in the class immediately start whispering about how handsome and terrific he is. Sylvia gives a much more nervous introduction, and Kevin directs them to their seats. The male students, meanwhile, comment on how cute Sylvia is. Second sits in class, feeling somewhat worried about whether he can learn all the sorceries he needs in just 2 weeks, resolving to get the tour started as soon as the lesson is over. After class, he approaches Professor Kevin and asks to be introduced to his afternoon guide so they can get a meal together and deepen their friendship. Kevin agrees and calls out for a student named Main Kuan. A blonde-haired student named Main responds to the professor's call. Kevin asks Main if he is ready for the afternoon tour and if he could also show Second the cafeteria, and Second asks if he can ask Main questions about sorcery. Second feels it's better to ask permission first before trying to strip information from Main, not wanting to risk putting himself at a disadvantage. When Kevin confirms that Main is the first-year representative, Second realizes this is a golden opportunity to get as much information as he wants. Second asks Main to get along for the tour, and Main cheerfully agrees. Second notes that Main isn't being cautious towards him, which should make his goal of finding the grimoires much easier. He calls for Sylvia, who is being swarmed by a group of female students, and she apologizes for keeping him waiting. Main and Second turn to look at Sylvia, who is now free from the crowd. The other girls suddenly become flustered, asking Sylvia if Main is His Highness. Sylvia realizes Main is a prince and begins to apologize profusely, but he asks her to treat him as an equal inside the school, which surprises her. Main then takes Second's hand and says they should head to the cafeteria together, much to Second's confusion. Second finds the situation strange. Main was cold to the beautiful Sylvia but assertive with him, a pretty boy, making him wonder if this guy could be. Bothered by the interaction, he feels he must genuinely face the prince and figure out how to reject him, deciding to just ask him straight. He bluntly asks Main if he swings that way. Sylvia is shocked, and Main becomes incredibly flustered, blushing and denying it. Main insists that he is straight, but Second explains that since he was more affectionate with him than with Sylvia, he had to ask. Just then, a super handsome silver-haired boy bumps into them, seemingly lost in his own world. A bright-eyed student named Main declares that he is fond of Second, who can only stare back with a deadpan expression. The student who confronted them earlier asks about Second's proud attitude, to which he retorts that he is speaking to the man who plans to become the world's #1. Main is delighted by this, exclaiming that it is his first time talking to such an honest person. He explains that while the Royal Academy of Magic is supposed to disregard status, everyone at the palace and the school only ever sees him as the second prince. He laments that it feels like only his mother truly sees him for who he is. Second dismisses this as a pretty typical story, earning a sharp rebuke from Sylvia for being impolite. Main tells Sylvia that it's all right, explaining that he appreciates Second for being so direct as to ask if he swings that way, right after learning he was a prince. Changing the subject, Second asks Maine if he knows where the Academy's grimoires are stored. Maine informs him that the grimoires for the Opo-Opo and Raptor forms are in the library, while the Coral form requires special permission from the head librarian, and he is about to mention the fourth form, surprising Second that it might be here. He clarifies that the fourth form grimoire is not at the Academy but is safeguarded at the Royal Palace, as he has seen it there once before. A silver-haired student approaches their table and announces that it is about time they headed off. The afternoon tour of the Academy was so long and courteous that by the time they arrived at the library, the sun had completely set. They stand before the entrance to the Academy's library at dusk. The silver-haired guide informs them that any student can use the library and they should visit tomorrow, before bidding them a cheerful farewell. Second stretches his stiff shoulders, and Sylvia remarks that that should be her line. He tells her that starting tomorrow, she will be confined to the library to learn fire magic, specifically the Raptor and Coral forms, to use in combination with her Flame Wolf's bow and work towards becoming a magic archer. As they walk down a hallway, they overhear two students gossiping about the scary-looking exchange students. One student mentions seeing them with His Highness Maine, while the other mockingly calls Maine a bookworm who has an Oedipus complex. They continue to gossip, saying Maine pisses them off with his condescending look and sarcastic comments about his status, which is why he is totally alone. The gossip gives off a seriously unpleasant vibe, and Second recognizes it as indirect bullying, realizing that Maine is, in fact, all alone. A calculating thought crosses his mind. If he befriends the Lonely Prince, he might build a connection with the Cast-All royal family and get them to show him the fourth form's grimoire, leaving him no choice but to proceed. The bullies continue, saying that the prince becoming buddies with exchange students is like trash piling up together. One of them adds that if they are talking about trash, they have to include that beast loser as well. Just then, the silver-haired student from before walks by, and the bullies laugh, calling him a failure as Second and Sylvia look on in shock. Sylvia confronts two students, angrily demanding to know if their derogatory comment about a fellow student was an act of beastral discrimination. The bullies quickly deny it, claiming their insult was not about beast folk in general, but specifically aimed at a seriously incompetent loser from Class F named Eco Leaflet. With her eyes glowing intensely, Sylvia dismisses their excuse and asks why they then referred to her and Second as trash, causing the bullies to panic. She declares it is too late for explanations and brings her fists down upon their heads. As the students flee in terror, Sylvia smiles, satisfied that justice has been served. Second calls out to the proud-looking Sylvia, telling her it is time for them to head back. He makes a mental note to remember the name he just heard, the beast loser Eco Leaflet. The next afternoon in the library, Second asks a librarian for the grimoires for the Raptor form of all elements, and she agrees to get them for him. He takes one of the books and, after a quick flip through its pages, acquires the Raptor form fire skill. Sylvia is amazed by his speed and asks if he is already done, to which he confirms that he acquired the skill. With Sylvia watching in amazement, he casually flips through the remaining 3 books, learns them all, and then hands the stack over to her. She worries if she can even learn the material in 2 weeks and asks Second if he has any tricks he could share. The question makes him recall his previous life as the world's #1, and how he hated the terms tricks and secrets because of the damn newbies who would constantly hassle him for shortcuts. He has incredibly unpleasant memories of their selfish motives, of them just wanting to breeze through the game without putting in any real effort. And yet, when Sylvia asks for tricks, he is surprised to find that it doesn't sound the slightest bit unpleasant. He realizes she is swallowing her pride and asking because she's worried she'll be a burden if she can't learn the skills in time, a consideration he finds truly pleasing. This is a world of difference from his previous life, a truly intimate exchange, not a casual online relationship, and he is glad that she is relying on me. He announces a change of plans, telling a surprised Sylvia that he is going to teach her himself. Filled with a feeling he is experiencing for the first time, the delight of teaching someone, he sits down next to a remorseful yet happy Sylvia. After a period of study, he places his hand on the book and declares that they will stop for the day. Having seriously read the grimoires for the first time, he finds their contents absurdly wordy and hard to understand, thinking it would be better to study something more practical. For Sylvia's sake, he focused on teaching her the crucial points, the magical effects, how firepower is calculated, how to use the skills, and the changes in cast times at each rank. He explained as many wiki-like pointers as he could, and when she asked if she had to memorize it all, he confirmed that she did. He reflects that this is the only kind of material he ever bothered to study, having researched everything about Mabayon more than anyone else. And now, that knowledge, which was useless in his previous life, has become a more powerful weapon than anything else, a fact that makes him incredibly happy. When he asks if she's learned the skills, she says she needs a bit more time, so he tells her not to fret and prepares to leave her to her studies. As he leaves the library, a cat-eared girl suddenly appears in the hallway with a loud cry. She crashes directly into him, looking up with wide eyes and exclaiming that he is so handsome. He asks if she is talking about him, and she enthusiastically confirms that she is. The girl introduces herself as Iko Leaflet, and Second realizes she is the rumored student he heard about earlier. He introduces himself as Second. Iko then turns and gives an equally energetic greeting to Sylvia, who introduces herself as well. Outraged that such an adorable and seemingly harmless girl is being bullied, he asks Iko if she is troubled by anything. She tilts her head and cheerfully replies that she isn't really troubled by anything. Confused by her answer, he tells her that if anything does come up, she should tell him and he will help her somehow, an offer she happily accepts. He then asks her about the massive stack of books she is carrying on a cart. She brightly explains that everyone asked her for them, which makes Second realize that she is being used as a gopher. He asks if she can handle the large load by herself, and she proudly puffs out her chest, insisting that she is fine and quite strong. He insists on helping her, saying it is a rare incident and that she should feel honored. She thanks him for the offer but politely declines, stating that she will do it herself. She explains that this sort of thing is all she is good for, so she is trying her best to help everyone in the hopes that they will treat her kindly if she becomes more helpful. His expression darkens at her words, and he tells her to stop thinking that way. Unbothered, she simply waves a cheerful, "See yo," and heads off down the hall. He watches her struggle to push the heavy cart, and her honest, desperate look reminds him of the root of his own pain, the feeling of gears of effort spinning but never connecting. The word echoes in his mind, pointless. He recalls the feeling that risking your life for something like an online game was nothing but pointless, even after becoming the world's #1. He remembers contemplating how idiotic and worthless he was, and how his efforts were ultimately vain, a shame that followed him until he died. A totally hopeless guy like him was miraculously saved by being brought to this world, a true blessing from the gods. It is for that reason that he now painfully resonates with Iko's feelings and, realizing a miracle may not happen for her, resolves to save her with his own hands. Sylvia finds him standing motionless in the hallway and asks if he is okay. That night, he lies in bed pondering Iko's situation, wondering how she could attend the prestigious Royal Academy of Magic if she is truly incompetent. The Academy is a renowned elite institution, and simply being enrolled implies a certain level of knowledge and magical ability. After pondering the issue throughout the entire night, he comes to a single conclusion. The next morning, he tells a surprised Sylvia that he thinks they should recruit Iko Leaflet into their party. Sylvia immediately kneels, declaring that nothing could be more pleasing than for her path to align with his, prompting him to tell her to stop acting like a knight so early in the morning. He admits he doesn't know if Iko will accept, but if she doesn't, he plans to at least look at her status and offer some advice. As they walk through the school grounds, Sylvia gasps in shock. They see Iko kneeling on the ground, her uniform dirted and surrounded by spilled books and trash. Both Second and Sylvia are horrified by the sight. He gets an extremely bad feeling, knowing something is clearly and terribly wrong. He observes that none of the students walking by are reaching out to help her. They simply pass by, ignoring her with an indescribable hostility. He approaches Iko and asks if she is okay or if she fell down. She violently pushes him away, screaming that she is fine and for him not to talk to her. Second's face becomes grim as he recognizes the situation for what it is, the worst of all evils. He recognizes a scent that he has smelled once before. It is the scent of despair. A desperate voice shouts, "Stay away." A young beastfolk girl runs through the school grounds. Second knows that whatever happened to her, Iko has now realized that her efforts are futile. He clenches his fists in determination. A flashback shows Iko carrying bags of what appears to be trash while two male students look on. The students mock her, calling her a dunce for going out of her way to bring them the mud that they are about to dump on her. They laugh as they splash the contents of the bags all over her. The act forced her to hopelessly face the reality she had been turning a blind eye to, that nothing will change even if she continues to lie to herself about her futile efforts. She thinks about how everyone should have dreams, but seeing her own dashed is just too sad. Her eyes are wide with despair, her face and hair covered in filth. Back in the present, Second looks on with resolve and decides he has to save her. He begins to run. Second, Sylvia, and a silver-haired student chase after Iko, with the silver-haired student eventually grabbing her. Iko struggles, once again yelling for them to stay away. An hour later, Sylvia is exhausted from the chase, but Second notes that by some chance, Iko still has SP remaining. He tries to tell her it's all right and that they only want to talk, but she screams for them to go away and leave her alone. She finally breaks down, crying in utter despair. He knows she is on the losing side and that leaving her alone now would be even more futile. From the chase, he has deduced that she is slow, powerful, has a lot of SP, and therefore likely has low INT. He decides that it is a huge gamble, but one worth taking. He draws his sword and tells Sylvia not to be startled. As Sylvia asks what he is doing, he rushes forward toward the still crying Iko. He brings the sword down into his own arm. Both Sylvia and Iko stare in absolute shock as blood splatters from the wound. Second grits his teeth in pain, a crazed look in his eyes. Sylvia screams that he is a fool, as Iko and the other students back away in terror. He clutches his bleeding arm, grunting in pain as he pulls out the recovery sorcery wand med. He knows that if he can successfully recruit Iko to his party here, he will close in on his goal of becoming the world's #1. He holds the wand out to her, declaring that she is suited for recovery sorcery and must use it to heal his arm. He shouts that she is a paladin, a fact he believes with all his heart. Through her tears, she stammers that she can't do it. He gambled on the rare wand made by Holy Slimes, which allows anyone who equips it to use the recovery med spell. If Iko's growth type is indeed paladin, a healer type class, then the wand's ++ bonus effect will activate, resulting in a recovery powerful enough to restore his arm instantly. As Iko continues to hesitate, he screams in feigned agony that it hurts and for her to hurry up and do it. He yells that there are no buts, and demands that she tell him she can do it. She finally agrees, taking the wand from his hand. He tells her to believe that she can help, that this is the right thing to do. He shouts for her to realize that this is her way out of her despair. Her eyes widen as she seems to understand something. She closes her eyes and shouts, "Heal," unleashing a wave of light from the wand. A warm glow envelopes Second's wounded arm. He looks down in surprise to see that his arm is completely back to normal. He tries to stand, but collapses as Sylvia rushes to his side. He explains that in this world, even if HP and damage are healed, one's physical condition from things like blood loss doesn't return to normal quickly. As he lies on the ground, he confirms his theory in his mind. Iko is a paladin. He had realized her growth type while chasing her. She is slow, powerful, has a lot of SP, and is a dunce in a magic academy, which means she has insanely low INT and is not suited to be a sorceress. Because her DX is also low, she is not suited for archery, and though her STR is decent, her low AGI means she can't maneuver well, yet despite her low INT, she has a ton of MP. If one just looks at these factors, she seems completely hopeless. However, some of the highest-ranking players in the game willingly chose this growth type, and every famous team definitely had a paladin as one of their members. The reason they are such effective tanks lies in their unique abilities. Paladins leverage their high HP, SP, and VIT to utilize shield arts, becoming a wall for their comrades and single-handedly soaking up damage from monsters, then using their massive MP pool to personally use recovery sorcery to restore their own HP. In other words, they can stay standing as a wall until they run out of MP. If he could turn a paladin like Iko into a comrade, he could form a team with a completely satisfactory advance guard, middle guard, and rear guard. With a team consisting of Iko the paladin, himself the all-rounder, and Sylvia the magic archer, he would greatly close in on becoming the world's #1 and be able to aim even higher. That is what came to his mind in that moment of desperation. He wanted her on his team, no matter what. Second reflects that he is trying to make Iko his ally because she would be useful with her recovery sorcery, admitting to himself that he is trying to make use of her. He thinks back to Sylvia, realizing he did the same thing with her by taking advantage of the emptiness in her heart and forcefully persuading her to join him. He admits he went overboard by stabbing himself to attract Iko's sympathy and draw her towards him, but he truly does want her to follow him. He awakens in a bed, groggy and disoriented. Sylvia rushes to his side, relieved that he is finally awake. She takes his hand in hers. She tells him not to be so overboard, warning that if he were to lose his hand, he wouldn't be able to become the world's #1. He gently points out that she is holding his uninjured left hand, not the one he stabbed. A flustered Sylvia lets go and tells him he had quite a nightmare. He smiles and tells her it's not a big deal and not to worry about him. She insists that should be her line to say to him. She tells him that she and Iko were saved by him and no one else. She was in a completely hopeless situation, and he saved her from it easily. She declares that he doesn't have to worry about anything because she will be his knight. With a brilliant smile, she promises to follow him to the ends of the earth. He wonders if she heard him sleep-talking, but then suspects that she saw through his manipulative plan from the very beginning. She saw through his attempt to take advantage of her weakness and use her for his own goals. And yet, she still took it upon herself to declare she would follow him, making him realize that she is a good girl. Suddenly, a voice shouts his name, breaking his train of thought. The door bursts open and Iko runs into the room. She trips and falls directly on top of him in the bed, apologizing profusely. He tells her again that recovery sorcery is suited for her and gives her an ultimatum: quit school and join him. He knows he is taking advantage of her situation to find the best opportunity, but he has faith that his offer will be her salvation. Iko is overjoyed at the thought that she can be helpful to him, and he confirms that they can travel together. Her excitement fades, replaced by a sad hesitation as she says, "But?" He asks if there is some reason she can't quit school, and her shocked expression tells him he is right. He confidently tells her to explain the reason to him, because he is the world's #1. Iko recounts her story, explaining that she was born in a remote beast folk village. She had a stupidly high amount of MP since she was a child, leading her father to boast everywhere that his daughter was a prodigy and the villagers to hope she had a talent for sorcery. The story spread, and last year, the villagers all pooled their gold to enroll her at the prestigious Royal Academy of Magic. They foolishly believed that if the prodigy from their countryside village became a prominent sorceress, it would help the village's development. She explains that she had no problem passing the entrance exam as her knowledge of sorcery was superior, but her paladin growth type meant her INT stat was abnormally low. Though she has learned advanced magic, her abysmally low INT means her spells lack power, causing her to be considered a loser by the other students. She finishes by saying that she can't quit because she cannot betray the expectations of all her villagers. Second understands what their expectations have produced. They have become a massive weight crushing her heart. He tells her that it's okay because, unlike his own past, she has a good escape route right here. She questions his meaning, and he tells her not to worry. He looks her in the eye and declares that he is going to become the world's #1, and she needs to understand what that means. He explains that it means being the best in the world with not a single person stronger than him, and that she would be one of his team members, a position far more prestigious than being a sorceress of the royal court. He paints a grand picture of her return home as part of his legendary team, where the villagers would hold a festival for 3 days straight and erect a bronze statue of her in the center of town. The image is so over the top that Iko can't help but let out a small laugh. He continues, acting out how the village chief would praise her and how her own father would beg her to get an autograph from the great Sekensama. His goofy performance makes her burst into unrestrained, joyous laughter. The two of them share a moment of genuine, happy connection. Iko suddenly jumps forward and embraces him. With tears of relief and happiness in her eyes, she declares that she will go with him. And with that, Sekon's plan succeeded. The paladin beastfolk Iko Leaflet became his ally. Sekon tells Iko that she will withdraw from her studies today and obtain permission to enroll in Class A as his attendant. She agrees. The trio stands before the headmaster. The headmaster asks for a little time to consider the request. Sekon agrees and asks how long they should wait. She informs him that she will hold an emergency staff meeting at lunch and they will have a decision afterward. Sekon says he will look forward to the good news and they take their leave. They walk down a hallway in the academy. Sylvia asks Sekon why he made such a request. He admits that he feels his request was unrealistic, but he thinks there's a good chance it will go through. Sylvia wonders how that could be. Sekon explains that as exchange students and nobles from a foreign country, they witnessed bullying, particularly towards a beastfolk. Sylvia realizes that if his home country of Zipong treats beastfolk with hospitality, then the academy would be in a difficult position. Sekon continues, stating that the situation gives off an extremely poor impression and the staff would see it as a problem, especially since they are stuck in a situation where they can't do anything even when it's pointed out that they're turning a blind eye to bullying. because the staff will want to conclude this amicably and avoid any more problems. He is confident his request will pass. Iko exclaims that Second is so smart, to which he replies that it's because he's the world's #1. Just then Main approaches them. Main says he heard the news that Second is making Iko his attendant and wonders how he found out so quickly. Second confirms it's true, stating that Iko is an excellent recovery sorceress and that the school's inability to see that reveals its true nature. Main laughs, saying Second is the same as always, and declares that he truly loves his straightforward personality. Second is visibly creeped out. Second recoils, realizing Main really is gay. Sylvia shouts Second's name in alarm as Iko looks on in confusion. The silver-haired student from the day before approaches, remarking, "Oh my, so here you are." Second greets him and asks for the verdict on his request. The student informs him that the request has been approved without complaint. He confirms that starting today, Iko will stay with them in Class A as Second's attendant. Second is glad to hear it. Second notes that the student is keen enough not to ask obvious questions like, "Why an attendant?" or "Why Class A?" though he was prepared to sarcastically reply that it was so she wouldn't get bullied again. Sylvia asks why he got Iko into Class A, and Iko echoes the question. He could easily say it was so she wouldn't get bullied, but the truth is different. He briefly considered getting revenge on the bullies, but Iko herself didn't want that. She simply said that she wanted to be with him, and that was all. Second looks back at Iko and Sylvia. He tells them it's because she is his comrade. The scene shifts to an empty table in the cafeteria. At the library, Second knows he needs to get Sylvia to learn sorcery quickly, as their exchange period is limited. 1 week passes. His kind and thorough lectures bore fruit, as Sylvia managed to acquire the fire element, raptor form, in just 3 days. Sylvia feels she has grasped some sort of trick and strangely feels like she could even learn the coral form. Hearing this, they borrow the grimoires for all 4 elements of the coral form from the librarian. Since it was a good chance to acquire them, Second figured he would learn them all as well. Sylvia seemed to be trying quite hard, staying planted in her seat and studying the grimoires as if possessed by something. A sky with clouds is shown. Since he had already taught Sylvia everything she needed to know, Second found the time quite relaxing. He, Iko, and Main are shown playing together in the courtyard. And that is how they enjoyed the rest of their comfortable days. While it seems like he isn't doing much, Second has an objective: to get on Main's good side. He feels he's already fulfilling that objective, but thinks he's not quite there yet. The reason he wants to get on Main's good side is that his goal is to acquire the 4th form's grimoires, which Main said are located inside the royal palace. The grimoires for every element of the 4th form have a roughly 10% drop rate from the boss of the 1st rank dungeon, Algin, which is the simplest of the expert level dungeons. Presently, his party would find it difficult to explore Algin dungeon. Thus, he has been trying to get closer to Main to build a relationship where he could ask to be brought to the royal palace. Iko approaches him with a document, asking what it is. He realized it late, but it turns out Iko isn't very literate and has trouble with the common language used in this world. He recalls that back in Mabayan, most beast folk spoke their own language, which means Iko specifically learned the common tongue just to come to this school. In spite of the handicap of needing a dictionary to read the grimoires, she surprisingly managed to acquire the raptor form for the wind and earth elements, though she can't use them because her INT is too low. He thinks that although she looks like an idiot, she might actually be extremely intelligent. Iko asks him to take a look at the document. The document is a flyer for the 51st Sorcery Convention, which is accepting entrance. He sees that it's an annual sorcery convention and that there is a prize for the winner. Iko asks what the prize is, and as he reads the flyer, he is shocked to see the prize is a chase ring. The prize is the chase ring. He turns to Iko with a serious expression. With a determined grin, he announces that they are going to the sorcery convention. Second thinks about the chase ring, noting that despite its tacky name, it is an extremely powerful accessory. The ring's effect grants a 10% chance of an extra attack after casting sorcery, which is essentially a double attack. Second knows that while a 10% effect may not seem like much to the uninformed, thinking that way is a mistake. The truth is that the accessory can be upgraded 3 times. If one can befriend a high-ranking blacksmith capable of performing an ability upgrade, the chase ring would evolve and provide a monstrous ability. Specifically, after 3 upgrades, the chance of an extra attack rises from 10% to 25%. An item with such a great hidden ability is rare, and upgrading it costs 1.5 billion CL. That was the price back in the Mabayan days. In this world, who knows how much it costs? He is determined to get his hands on it, no matter what means he must take. Luckily, the sorcery convention will be held on the last day of their exchange program. He worries that going all out with his advanced sorcery will make people suspicious, but he figures he can manage as long as he leaves quickly afterward. The day before the convention, he asks Maine if he will be participating. Maine confirms that as the second prince, he has to participate, and asks if Second will be there as well. Second confirms with a grin that he will be participating. Sylvia is shocked, exclaiming that she never heard about this, but Second coolly replies that's because he never mentioned it. Noticing Maine's unhappy expression, Second asks if there is something he doesn't like about the convention. Maine replies that his older brother will be there. Second asks if he doesn't like the first prince, and Maine admits he is not good with him. Maine explains that his older brother is a talent supremacist who looks down on him immensely, calling him a weakling, because his forte is sorcery while his brother's is swordsmanship. Although the first prince is officially visiting to spectate as the first chivalric order's commander, Maine is sure his true motive is to denounce him in front of the masses, as his brother sees him as a threat in the fight for the crown. Second realizes the first prince is the commander of the first chivalric order and remarks that he sounds like a bad guy. Sylvia clenches her fist, her expression darkening. Second understands that the first prince is the highest of all the corrupt upper echelons of the chivalric order that harassed Sylvia. Second asks if Maine can just feign sickness to not attend, but Maine explains that his brother would just use it as an excuse to call him a coward. Sylvia asks Second what's up, noticing his pensive look as he reflects that being a prince is painful. She then informs him that she acquired the coral form that very morning, much to his surprise. With a smug smile, she throws his own words back at him, saying it's because she never mentioned it. On the day of the sorcery convention, spectators fill the stands of a large arena. Second waits for his match. Two students nearby gossip that the convention is on a decline, and they have never even heard of the chase ring prize. Second is baffled that aspiring sorcerers don't know the worth of the chase ring or the existence of ability upgrades. The students' conversation shifts to the first prince, Klaus, spectating, and his rumored bad terms with the second prince, Maine. They joke that the first prince will likely beat up his brother in an exhibition match, and one remarks that he seems pretty cool. Second finds the painted picture of first prince versus second prince unnatural and feels it's not Maine's fault. He concludes that there is a huge possibility that the first prince, Klaus, is manipulating his brother's reputation. Maine approaches the gossiping students, who fall silent. Maine asks Second if he is a seed in the tournament. Second confirms he starts in the semifinals, meaning they won't face each other until the finals. Maine smiles and says they should meet at the finals then. A tournament bracket shows that with 7 participants, Maine is on the left end and Second is on the right, meaning Maine needs 1 win to reach the finals while Second needs 2. Second asks Maine what one actually does in a sorcery convention. Maine and his friends fall over in shock. Maine can't believe Second signed up without knowing what it entails, while Second guesses it involves killing each other with sorcery, which Maine shouts is totally wrong. Second then asks if they are just killing each other normally, without sorcery, which only makes Maine more exasperated. Maine explains that the convention is conducted using a competition crown, and has nothing to do with risking their lives. The competition crown is a useful item for PvP that allows for a competition with no risk and has detailed rules for equipment and skill usage. The reason there's no risk is that everything that happens inside a competition using the crown is virtual, including HP, MP, and all damage dealt and received. Originally, PvP duels used a dual crown, where people would die if their HP reached 0 because it was conducted with real flesh and blood, but with the competition crown, everything is virtual. Because of this safety, players in Mobion called it meant for chickens, as when a participant's HP becomes 0, the competition simply ends and things return to normal. However, some curious gamers were fascinated by the freedom of the rules and invented interesting competitions that were completely different from typical duels. Maine explains that the sole rule for this competition is that all attacks must be done with sorcery, a rule which Second internally calls a shitty-ass game. The announcer calls for match 3, first-year Class A's Second versus first-year Class F Steen. Second stares down his opponent. The referee tells them to activate the competition crown. A magical circle with a 50-meter radius appears, defining the competition arena. Leaving the circle results in a loss. The referee asks if the two combatants are ready. With a confident smirk, Second gets ready as the referee yells, "Begin!" Second's first opponent, Dean, launches a wind spell. The title page shows a close-up of Second's determined face. Second easily identifies the attack as a raptor form of wind and thinks his opponent is an idiot. He recalls that the various sorcery forms have increasingly longer cast times, with the fast Opo-Opo form being an ordinary attack and the slower raptor form being a spread strike. It's common sense that sorcery with a long cast time like the raptor form is pointless in a competition because any hit will break the casting. Second realizes Dean must have heard a rumor that he can't use sorcery decently and is trying to fool around with him. He is being made light of. The world's #1 is being underestimated by this punk. With a menacing grin, Second tells his opponent to prepare himself. He unleashes his own Opo-Opo form of wind. Dean counters with his raptor form of wind. The two wind spells collide in a burst of energy. Second knows there's a particular trait when two sorcery spells collide. They can be used defensively to cancel each other out, though the caster still takes some damage. Because the cooldown for the Opo-Opo form is at least twice as long as the raptor forms, he can produce an advantage that makes up for the difference in power. He attacks again and again, giving his opponent a choice: be tortured to death or die begging for his life. He then unleashes his Coeurl form of fire. His Coeurl form is at the 5th class, giving it a reduced cast time and an attack power of 300% of his INT value, making his opponent believe he is done for. He launches the powerful fire spell. The attack engulfs his opponent. Dean is sent flying out of the arena by the massive explosion. Second curses, realizing he put in too much power and didn't get to toy with his opponent as planned. The referee stammers as he declares Second the winner. When the competition finishes, the grounds return to normal as if nothing happened. Dean sits on the floor in a daze while Second looks on impassively. He nonchalantly confirms that he won. Eiko celebrates his victory, calling him strong, while Sylvia worries he's overdoing it. He tells Sylvia it's no big deal since he'll be the world's #1 eventually, and besides, they are leaving today after they get the prize. Eiko cheers for him to do his best. Sylvia blushes, embarrassed by his casual mention of her as his mom. The announcer calls the next match, the semi-finals between first-year Second and fourth-year Keith. The winner of this match will face Maine in the finals. The referee tells the two competitors to get ready and begins the match. Second notes that his opponent is pretty knowledgeable, understanding that in a sorcery-only match between intermediate students, the outcome is decided by who gets the first move. Because of this, the intelligent choice is to primarily fight with the fast-casting Opo-Opo form. The two trade blows, their wind spells canceling each other out. Second realizes this will become a never-ending stalemate. This is the flaw with the competition's rules. The spells will be cast at the same time and cancel each other out in an infinite loop, which is why he considers it a shitty-ass game. He thinks that while his opponent did well to bring the match to a stalemate, sadly for him, his enemy is the former world's #1. Keith breaks the stalemate, asking Second to surrender and offering him a suitable reward. When Second asks why, Keith explains that he cannot allow Second and Maine to fight, as he is going to have Maine win so he can have a friendly competition with the first prince, Klaus. Second asks why he is being told this, and Keith replies that he doesn't deserve to win and should just lose. He claims that only a competition between the two princes, Klaus and Maine, would have meaning. Second realizes they won't reach a resolution this way and accuses Keith of bringing politics onto the competition grounds. He deduces that Keith is Klaus's underling and was hired to help Maine win the finals. This confirms the rumors he heard in the waiting room. Klaus would use the friendly competition to beat Maine up in front of the spectators. Second is not pleased. What displeases him the most is his opponent trying to negotiate during a stalemate and foolishly trying to get him to give up. He asks if Keith thinks it will go that smoothly, declaring his attempt futile. The two exchange blows again. This time, they both use Opo-Opo form of fire, which also cancel each other out. Second acknowledges that Keith is skilled at countering him, but knows they won't reach a resolution in this situation. With a sly grin, he decides that this is a good opportunity to show them all the real deal. He pulls out a bow, much to Keith's surprise. Keith must have wondered how he could use a bow in a sorcery-only competition, but it is already too late. Second tells Sylvia to watch carefully. He fires a massive flaming arrow at his opponent. Keith recoils in surprise from Second's attack. The powerful magical force slams into him. He stumbles backward as Second calmly approaches, bow in hand. Second understands that this is the goal of the first prince. The sorcery-only competition is a flawed game where stalemates can occur, and Prince Klaus must have some sort of technique to break through them. Remembering that Noirsan said Klaus specialized in swordsmanship, Second deduces he must be using magic swordsmanship. As long as Klaus has that trump card, he will never lose to Main in this competition and can poke him full of holes without any fear of retaliation. Second finds this cowardly and decides that the prince should experience firsthand just how foolish of an act it is. He prepares to unleash his own power. He uses a combination of 3 skills: Knight Archery, to lock onto his target, Silver General Archery, to raise his strength, and the Coeurl form of Earth, to boost the impact. As Keith tries to run, Second tells him it's futile. The powerful attack hits Keith squarely in the back. A massive eruption of Earth slams into him, crushing him. Keith is thrown to the ground, defeated, and the referee declares Second the winner of the match. The crowd in the stands erupts into cheers. Second looks on as his defeated opponent is attended to. In the spectator stands, a defeated Keith apologizes to the first prince, Klaus. Klaus tells him it's fine, as he has found a rather pretty gem in Second and will simply need to change his plans, confident that Second will win against Main. Keith worries that Second is a powerful enemy, but Klaus dismisses his concerns, sure that he can force Second to join him. Klaus laughs, pleased to find someone who can use combinations of sorcery in the academy, thinking he will make an excellent pawn. Back in the arena, the announcer declares they are entering the finals, and Main tells Second that he is truly powerful. Second apologizes for hiding his strength, but Main says he has come to like him even more for it. Seeing his opportunity, Second asks Main to take him to the royal palace to read the 4th form grimoire in exchange for the match, and Main agrees. As the referee calls for the final match to begin, Main looks on with a determined expression. Both Second and Main begin by casting Oppo Oppo form of wind. Second decides he won't use his magic archery, as it would be rude and no fun against an opponent who can only use sorcery. He expects the spells to cancel out and bring them back to square one, but his expectation is immediately defied. Main uses Cancel Cast, a technique to interrupt his own spell. Second is impressed, realizing that Main has forcefully twisted his own cast time. He understands the trick. While getting attacked during a cast will interrupt it, starting a cast while being attacked will not. Main takes advantage of this and unleashes a Coeurl form of wind. The powerful wind spell slams into Second. However, because Second's skill rank is higher, his own cast time is shorter, allowing him to cast his own Coeurl form and cancel out Main's attack. He notes the look of shock on Main's face, a look that says, "That was my trump card," a look one must never show in a PvP match. He realizes he has made light of Main and underestimated him. And if Main came at him seriously, it would only be respectful to do the same. He resolves to execute the ultimate sorcery in Mobius Online, with the dignity of the man who defended the title of Wise General 22 times in a row. He tells everyone to watch carefully. He casts Coeurl form of fire, and Main counters with Coeurl form of wind, declaring that it shall not pass. The fireball flies through the air. Second knows from his years of experience that at this distance, the spell is out of its effective range. He never intended it as an offensive move. The fireball detonates in the middle of the arena, creating a massive wall of flames. Main is shocked by the smokescreen. He realizes Second is already moving on to his next action. Through the flames, he can't see any magic circle. Second explains that sorcery isn't always offensive, it can also be used to hide one's next move. For his next move, he uses Raptor form of Earth, a spread strike skill whose effect is no joke. He invokes the spell. A massive wall of earth erupts from the ground. The wall rises high into the air. It completely surrounds Main, trapping him. Second explains that calling forth a wall to limit an opponent's freedom is a basic tactic in a sorcery battle, and now it's time for his finisher, Coeurl form of water. He launches the water spell over the wall, where it crashes down on the trapped Main. The force of the water knocks Main off his feet. Main smiles and concedes defeat, while Second looks down, his expression unreadable. In the stands, Sylvia and Eco cheer that Second won. Second approaches the laughing Main and angrily asks him why the hell he is laughing. Main tells Second that he is powerful. Second disagrees, stating that if Main's Coeurl form had been at least 5th class, he probably would have lost. He adds that because Main was constantly on the brink of defeat, he unknowingly made light of him. Main asks if that means Second isn't really powerful. Second gets angry, demanding to know if Main is pissed off that he lost to someone who looked down on him. Main timidly says that he isn't really upset. Second tells him not to lie to himself, warning that if he doesn't get pissed off here, he'll stay that way for the rest of his life. The first prince, Klaus, appears and praises Second's magnificent perception, agreeing that his stupid younger brother lacks spirit. Klaus tells Second that he has caught a glimpse of his abilities and that he is truly skillful, offering him special permission to join his ranks and study leadership. Second understands that being under the direct supervision of the First Prince would secure him a position in the upper echelon of the First Chivalric Order. He also knows that when Klaus is crowned king, he would be guaranteed an even greater promotion. Klaus looks at his younger brother with disdain. Second realizes that if he were to refuse this invitation, he would be declaring to the masses that he is making an enemy out of the First Prince. Everyone in the crowd, including Sylvia, Iko, and Keith, thinks that there's no way he could refuse the offer. That is what a normal person would think. Second gives a one-word answer, no. The crowd, along with Sylvia, Iko, Maine, and Keith, is stunned into silence by his refusal. A furious Klaus asks him to repeat himself. Second calmly says, I refuse. He thinks to himself that this is fine, as he already predicted this would happen. He knew Klaus couldn't beat up Maine now because of his interference, so he figured the prince would try to recruit him instead, especially since Klaus is the big boss of the dubious chivalric order. Klaus's face contorts with rage as he asks Second if he really wants to refuse him. Second explains that he made a promise with Maine before the match that he would go with him to the royal palace afterward. He states that the meaning behind these words is that he is already affiliated with the Second Prince. He adds that the referee can serve as a witness to the arrangement he made with Maine just a few minutes ago. Klaus angrily asks the referee if this is true, and the nervous official confirms that it is. Klaus grits his teeth in frustration, muttering, "Is that so?" Second knows that a contract was already made between him and the Second Prince. Therefore, Klaus cutting in and soliciting him is essentially a public act of attempted headhunting, which is a breach of etiquette even for the First Prince. Klaus concedes, telling Second that it is truly unfortunate and to show his devotion to Maine from now on. Second stands in the arena with Maine as Klaus departs. Maine calls out to Second, who notes that the prince is totally forgetting the lesson he was just teaching him. Second tells Maine it's time to continue the lesson. He asks if Maine could keep competing with him until he finally gets pissed off, but Maine begs him for some slack, saying there's no way he could win. Second calls him a fool, telling him that this is the part of him that has to change and the reason why his older brother calls him a weakling. Maine thinks Second is being extremely strict, like his older brother. Second tells him not to bunch them together. He flicks Maine on the ear and says it's because they're friends. Dumb. Tears well up in Maine's eyes. He smiles brightly and says, okay. The scene shows the exterior of the Royal Academy of Magic. Prince Klaus storms into the headmaster's office, cursing Maine's name and demanding to see Paula Memento. The headmaster, Paula, asks him to please calm down. He yells at her to shut up and to hurry and give him all the info she has on this sickening wretch Second. She hands him the documents, and he angrily demands that she hand them over. Klaus is furious that the documents only describe how Second spent his time in the academy. Paula explains that Second is a man of many mysteries and that even his home nation of Zipong is an absolute unknown. Klaus throws the papers in frustration. As she picks up the scattered documents, Paula thinks to herself that she heard he was hot-tempered. Looking out the window, she decides that she will need to look deeper into Second Kun. After receiving the chase ring as his prize for winning, Second and his party fled the Royal Academy of Magic. With that, his sorcery acquisition plan was accomplished for the time being. Now he simply needs to learn the 4th and 5th forms sometime in the future, and he'll be all set. He announces to the ladies, Sylvia and Iko, that he will now state their current objective. Sylvia looks on with a curious expression. He explains that they are going to focus on gaining experience in dungeons, and they will keep exploring until Iko in particular reaches an intermediate level. For their current situation, he figured that raising the average level of their skills should come first above all else, so they will concentrate their efforts on exploring dungeons for a while. Iko is excited about dungeons, and Sylvia asks if they are going to Royce Dungeon again. Second clarifies that this time they are going to a different second-rank dungeon. He announces that they are going to explore Limped Fath. Limped Fath dungeon doesn't spawn many monsters, and they all feature high defense but low offense, making it good training for their coordination. Plus, its boss, the Rock Tortoise, drops the Rock Shell Shield, which is perfect for Iko to equip. Sylvia is surprised to hear about a shield for Iko. Second explains that Iko is suited for the duty of fending off monster attacks on the front lines and asks if she is ready to improve her shield arts. Iko agrees. He adds that there will be times she'll still be hurt even with a shield, so to prepare for those moments, they should acquire some recovery sorcery as well. Iko affirms. Sylvia is worried, asking if he's really planning to have an innocent young girl stand on the front lines, but Second assures her it's fine and that she'll become indomitable in no time. They head to an armor shop. They buy a large shield that is as tall as Iko. Because there was no armor suitable for her body, they bought some high-class lesser equipment instead. The entire set came to 4 million CL, which is even more expensive than Second's own gear. Afterwards, they stopped by the Grand Royal Library, and he got Iko to learn pawn shield art and spear shield art. He tells Iko that their next stop is the church, where they will look at the recovery sorcery grimoires. At the church, a nun greets them, and Second asks to look at the recovery minor grimoire. Iko successfully acquires the recovery minor skill. Second explains that Limped Fath Dungeon can be found by taking a 4-hour trip on horseback from the royal capital and then traveling another 30 minutes past the farming town of Piho. The scene shows the rustic farming town of Piho. Soon after they arrived, they began exploring Limped Fath Dungeon. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, they advanced at their own leisure, focusing on Iko's acquisition of shield art skills. Iko easily acquired the shield art skills he wanted her to learn to start with the exception of Bishop Shield Art among the 5. A diagram explains the effects of the skills. Pawn Shield Art is standard protection, Spear Shield Art reflects piercing attacks, and Knight and Gold General provide protection with a knockback effect, with Gold Generals being an area of effect. Several days and about 10 runs later, Iko started to clearly distinguish herself as a paladin. She is shown blocking a powerful attack from a large monster. Sylvia calls out in alarm, asking if Iko is all right. Iko turns back, looking completely unfazed. Second observes that thanks to her shield arts, her HP and VIT have risen considerably, and she has gradually grown into a promising tank. He decides that it's time for her to learn Bishop Shield Art. Thinking that the right time had come, they progress towards the boss located in the deepest point of the dungeon. The boss of Limped Fath Dungeon is a massive tortoise monster called the Rock Tortoise. It boasts high defense, but it doesn't have much power. Second tells Iko to cast her skills according to his lead to protect them, explaining that the fight will take around 15 minutes even without mistakes and they'll have to start over if they mess up. With a determined look, Iko says, "Yeah, I can." The party approaches the boss. Second gives the command, "Let's go." He explains that the condition to acquire Bishop Shield Art is to utilize shield arts to completely block 100 attacks in a row from a boss that's stronger than you. The main bottleneck is the completely part. This basically means she can't take even a single point of damage, which limits her means of defending. She will have to either repel long-range pierce strikes with Spear Shield Art, or keep parrying attacks and knocking them back with Knight Shield Art or Gold General Shield Art. Parrying is a phenomenon that triggers when you synchronize with an enemy's attack and defend at the right timing. A successful parry protects you from damage and adds a weak knockback effect. Because of this timing requirement, the challenge becomes like a music game and it's a pain to master. However, once the timing is learned, it's possible to constantly parry to defend and battle with an insane advantage. Second guides her in tune with the Rock Tortoise's attacks, calling out which shield art to use. He notes that while the Rock Tortoise attacks simplistically, it's still hard to get the parry timing right at first sight. The Rock Tortoise lands a heavy blow, forcing Iko back. Second tells her she was a bit too slow and asks if she can keep going. With a determined look, she says, "I can." She casts Recovery Minor on herself to heal. She readies her shield for the next attack. The Rock Tortoise lets out a roar. From that point on, they continued facing off against the Rock Tortoise for almost 2 hours. A notification appears, confirming that Iko eventually acquired the new skill, Bishop Shield Art. Second tells Sylvia that it is about time for her to learn magic archery. Sylvia looks on with a wide-eyed, hopeful expression. She asks if she can learn it, and Second confirms that she can and that they will start acquiring the skills today. Iko excitedly asks what her role will be. Second tells her that she will be defeating Rock Tortoises today to try to get the Rock Shell Shield. He reflects that Iko has been happy lately, acting more like a dog than a cat beast, and tells the group it's time to go. The party stands before the entrance to a dark, wooded cave. Second tells Sylvia that she must first fulfill the condition of combining archery with sorcery. To acquire the combination skill in magic archery, she must use sorcery to kill 1,000 monsters that have been weakened to at least 25% of their HP using archery, a quota he expects her to meet in about a week. As a monster's claw appears, Second tells Iko to surprise it using her Bishop Shield Art. Iko stands ready with her shield as the monster approaches. She activates her Bishop Shield art. The powerful block sends a shockwave through the cave, surprising Sylvia and delighting Iko. Bishop Shield art has an effect called Strengthen Defense, which temporarily defends while amplifying one's VIT. For a high VIT character, the skill becomes powerful enough to leisurely repel attacks from boss-class monsters, reaching 600% of their VIT at the 9th grade. Second warns that it is an extremely powerful skill, but it drains a lot of SP, so she should only use it when she really needs to. Iko begins to cry with joy. She is overwhelmed with emotion, realizing that with the overwhelming utility of Bishop Shield art, she can finally be of use. A week later, a notification announces that Sylvia has acquired the new skill, Magic Archery Combination. Second decides to test it out and tells her to try the choral form. Sylvia draws her Flame Wolf's bow, imbued with fire magic. She hesitates, asking if he is sure, but he tells her to do it. She combines her Pawn Archery with her choral form of fire. The resulting explosion obliterates the monster. Second calculates that her critical damage was 1,612, which is good enough for use. He notes that if she converts her attack to Castle or Silver General and raises the rank of her choral form, it would become a mainstay backline skill, and he definitely wants her to try her hardest. A teary-eyed Second declares that he wants to do it. He gets close to Sylvia, who looks puzzled. He tells her that at this point in time, he wants to do it, causing her to panic. She asks if it isn't a bit early and if they shouldn't deepen their relationship first. He clarifies that he can't help but want to get stronger. Realizing her mistake, a flustered Sylvia agrees that since they have the chase ring, they have to get stronger. He apologizes for the misunderstanding and explains that this involves her Flame Wolf's bow as well. He also mentions that it involves the rock shell shield that Iko will eventually get. He tells them to listen carefully, as strengthening equipment is insanely important, and asks Sylvia how much damage she currently does with her castle archery, to which she replies around 3,000. He explains that if she simply strengthens the Flame Wolf's bow to its final stage, it would deal 12,000 damage instead, shocking her. She is amazed that the enhancement would provide 4 times as much damage and agrees that strengthening is important. When she asks how they will manage that, he confirms that they will need a blacksmith. He explains that there are 4 possibilities for finding one. The first is for the 3 of them to form a team, register at the Adventurers Guild, and take recruits there. Sylvia thinks this sounds rather difficult, as there's no guarantee a dependable blacksmith will approach them. The second option is to search through every single person who seems to have an aptitude for blacksmithing and invite them, an idea that makes Sylvia feel faint. He notes that while training a blacksmith from scratch has advantages, the chance of encountering someone with an aptitude is less than 1 in 10,000. The third and most realistic option is to invite an active blacksmith, but he admits there aren't many prospects, as it's unreasonable to ask someone in a valuable trade to ditch their current job for strangers. He then presents the fourth and most likely option. He looks at his companions with a serious expression. He declares, "Let's buy a slave." Sylvia considers this, realizing that finding a slave with the right aptitude would certainly be easy. Second is surprised that she isn't mad. Sylvia explains that a slave market would allow them to browse their statuses without any issues, making it a good idea to find a slave with an aptitude for blacksmithing. He is relieved, as he thought she would get angry and accuse him of wanting to be violent towards the slave. Having gotten her approval, he announces that they will return to the royal capital tomorrow and visit a slave dealer. Sylvia suggests that he should wear his rare, expensive-looking outfit. He agrees it's a good point, as looking rich would certainly get them better service, and says he'll get it prepared. A new adventure begins in the royal capital Vinceton. The group arrives at their destination, the Maurice Slave Company. A man with a mustache welcomes them, introducing himself as Philip, the company president. Second observes that his expensive clothes have a tremendous influence, granting him an audience with the biggest hotshot in these parts. He tells Philip that he is looking for a blacksmith slave and would like to analyze their statuses, to which Philip immediately agrees. The group waits in a well-appointed room. A line of muscular, grim-faced male slaves is brought before them. Seeing them, Second thinks to himself that he now completely understands why Sylvia didn't get angry at the idea of buying a slave. He realizes his own misunderstanding. Of course blacksmiths would be men like these, though he sighs with disappointment, as the word, slave, had gotten his hopes up for young men. Philip returns and asks if he has found any satisfactory slaves. Second thinks that he is disappointed they are all middle-aged men, and after sorting through their statuses, he hasn't found what he's looking for. He considers the ideal status for a blacksmith, requiring high STR, Dex, and LUK, with some INT being a bonus, a combination perfectly fulfilled by the blacksmith growth type. Moreover, since they will be upgrading the weapon of the man aiming to be the world's #1, he would prefer someone with an innately superior status. He concludes that the person he wants isn't among them. The slaves look on with dejected expressions. Philip apologizes and says the only others he has are criminal slaves. Second is indifferent, saying that as long as there is an excellent blacksmith, he doesn't mind either way. Philip understands but explains that he cannot bring criminal slaves to this room and asks them to follow him to the slave chambers. Second agrees and tells Sylvia and Eiko to stay behind. He follows Philip down a set of stairs, noting that the Maurice Slave Company seems to be well off, as the slaves are given a reasonable lifestyle and only a handful look to be in despair. Philip announces that they have arrived at the criminal slave chambers and that one of the 33 inmates is a blacksmith. Inside a cell, a man with a slave collar sits in despair. After reviewing his status, Second declares that he won't do. Philip apologizes for not being able to meet his expectations. As they are about to leave, Second points to an extremely secure chamber and asks who is inside. As an apology, Philip offers to show him. The door to the cell opens. Inside sits a beautiful, stoic dark elf with long, white hair. Philip explains that she is an assassin who served a duchess that was recently executed. Because she was forced to assassinate due to her slave contract, she herself was judged not guilty of any crime and was pardoned from execution, being sent to his company instead. Second looks at the dark elf. Philip adds that she is a talented woman, but due to a no hostility clause in her contract from the Kingdom of Castal, she cannot be used for anything other than a sex slave or a maid, and because she is a dark elf, there have been no takers. Second is intrigued by the no hostility clause, a serious restriction that means she can't attack. He wonders why a hot chick like a dark elf wouldn't be in huge demand. He recalls that there is a situation of beast folk discrimination and dark elf persecution happening in the Kingdom of Castal. He understands that in these times, it is considered extremely disgraceful to even have a dark elf slave, let alone use one as a sex slave. He asks the dark elf to show him her status. The first thing that stands out is her insanely high DX, followed by her high STR and INT. Her status seems to be in line with the game's design, which states that dark elves are an all-rounder type specializing in swordsmanship, archery, and sorcery. He notes that her LUK and AGI are also pretty high and asks what skills she has. She lists her skills: swordsmanship, archery, sorcery, string manipulation, and assassination. Second understands now. Her high DEX improves her sorcery and string manipulation, while her high AGI improves her assassination skill. This means her growth type could follow the blacksmith path. With a determined look, Second asks Philip, how much for her? At the cost of 16 million CL, he made the decision to buy the criminal dark elf slave, thinking that a top-grade blacksmith egg at this price probably means the world is doomed. Philip prepares the slave contract, a form of slave sorcery that Second has seen before in Mabon. A diagram shows how a master and slave bound by a slave sorcery contract cannot take any action that goes against its terms. He had been thinking so much about other things that he hadn't even read a single line of the contract, but he recalls that while there are dirty means to break it, a mysterious force usually prevents it from being broken in the first place. He reads the terms, which essentially state that the master is to treat the slave humanely, and the slave is to obey the master. However, he is curious about the very last term. B cannot make an attack on any kind of human being. He understands this is severe, as it would mean she couldn't defend herself if assaulted. He asks if anything can be done about the clause, but Philip explains that as it is an order from the country, it cannot be helped. Second decides he has no choice and agrees to take the contract with those terms. The slave sorcery is complete, and Philip thanks him for his purchase. When he asks the dark elf her name, she replies that she does not have one. Thinking she meant she didn't have a name tag or something similar, he makes a bad joke, addressing her as, "I do not have one," and telling her they are heading back to the reception. She looks at him with disgust and clarifies that she meant she does not have a name. He is surprised that despite being a slave, she has guts. He wonders what kind of life she led to not have a name and suggests that he give her one, to which she agrees. He considers her features: dark elf, delicious chocolate skin, violet hair. After a moment of thought, he has an idea. He asks her, "How about Yukari?" She closes her eyes, considering the name. She bows her head and says, "Understood. My name is Yukari. I will be in your kind service, master." He introduces himself as Second and says he will introduce her to his friends later. She replies, "Certainly." Sylvia asks Second if he found a good blacksmith. She is taken aback when she sees the person Second brought back with him. Sylvia asks if the beautiful dark elf girl is the blacksmith, and Second confirms that her name is Yukari and she will be training as one starting today. Sylvia is shocked that she never considered the possibility of a female blacksmith, and notes that Yukari's chest is huge. Iko cheerfully introduces herself to Yukari, who formally says she hopes they get along well, addressing her as Iko-sama. Iko tries to correct Yukari's formal address, but Second notes that while Iko has an incredible way of communicating, Yukari never loses her composure. Second then introduces Sylvia as a splendid magic archer, a title Yukari questions. With a smile, Second simply tells her that she will understand eventually. He announces that they are now heading back to the town of Piho to discuss what they will do from there. During their journey to Piho, Second tried to deepen his relationship with Yukari by asking her many things, but he was wrong to think he would be nervous. In the end, Yukari kept a low profile and gave cold, dull responses to all of his questions, so he quickly gave up trying to socialize. He worries that if they don't have a favorable relationship, she might leave even after she is trained to be a superior blacksmith, and he wants them to be more intimate as valuable comrades. After racking his brain over what to do, he ultimately arrives at the answer that he should just ask her directly. The group arrives at the town of Piho. He asks Yukari if he may ask her about her past. She asks if that is in order, and he clarifies that she doesn't have to answer if she doesn't want to. She then respectfully refuses to answer his question. As Yukari walks away, Second smiles to himself, realizing he gained more from that exchange than he expected. He understood that Yukari revealed a lot of her emotions in regards to his questions, showing caution, agitation, and fear. He knows there is definitely something in her past. Therefore, he concludes, she doesn't talk much and acts like an innocent slave because she is afraid of her past getting known. He understands her position. He recalls a time when he was still the world's #1. Someone had asked him what he did for a living. He remembers feeling similar emotions to what Yukari just showed, because he was afraid that revealing his real life would shatter the innocent relationships he had online, so he would always lie and say he was in real estate. He feared that if people knew he was unemployed, they would look at him with disdain, so he kept a distance from others and put up a front. He believes Yukari has similar thoughts, feeling that he would not accept her if he knew her past, though her reasons are surely not as simple as his own. So, if that is the case, what he should be doing to draw out her true nature is clear. He will need to get her to believe that these people will definitely accept you for who you are even after you've revealed your past. He knows this will be insanely hard, but if he doesn't know what else to do, he has to at least try. Shaking off his deep thoughts, he announces that it is time for dinner. At the town's tavern, Second proposes that they form a team. Sylvia and Iko are excited, and Second says that he hasn't mentioned their goal yet. He declares that he is aiming to become the world's #1, and that Sylvia and Iko are his allies assisting him. He then asks Yukari to assist him as well. Yukari questions the term world's #1, and states that as his slave, she will certainly assist if she is capable. Second realizes with frustration that she doesn't believe him at all, but he insists he's not kidding. Sylvia then asks Second how he will make his dream come true. He calls it an excellent question, addressing her by her full name, Sylvia Virginia. He explains that the answer is simple: you acquire every skill title, and then you continue to defend them in every title fight. He clarifies that titles are the peak of every skill, using archery as an example. To obtain the archery title, the first condition is to raise all 9 of its secondary skills to the 9th grade. The second condition is to attend and win the title fights, which are tournament-style PvP conventions held twice a year. Once the second condition is fulfilled, you are granted the privilege to challenge the current title holder, and if you beat them, you can publicly take their title, such as the Demon-Piercing General for archery. Other ways to acquire titles are to be the first on the server to fulfill the first condition or to defend the title against others, making it impossible for more than one person to hold the same title. The title implies the skill's pinnacle, making it the ultimate status in both name and practice, and if you were to acquire the title in every skill, you would obviously be the very best. He admits that conquering every title is a sufficient factor to earn the rank of world's #1, but he thinks that alone isn't enough to be called the true world's #1. He explains that the world rankings in Mabayon considered many other criteria as well. He tells Sylvia that the clear objective they should be aiming for first is conquering every title, and asks if she knows about the title fights. A shocked Sylvia says of course she does, asking if he plans to attend them for every skill. He confirms that since he is going for the world's #1, he naturally will. Yukari suddenly speaks up, stating that what he proposes is impossible. When he asks for her reasoning, she states that it is only natural, as people cannot become that powerful. She looks at him and tells him that he should not speak so frivolously. He presses her, telling her to stop dodging the question and give him her basis for thinking that they can't get stronger. She again insists that it is only natural, and he repeats his question, why does she think that? With a pained expression, she begins to say, that is because I. She cuts herself off and says never mind, that it is nothing. She asks to be excused and leaves the table. As she walks away, Second wonders what she was going to say, and the answer vaguely pops into his mind. He realizes that as a former assassin, she knows the pain and cruelty of getting stronger, and the difficulty and transience of defeating someone, which is why she got angry at his frivolous talk. Sylvia remarks that Yukari seems dangerous and mentally unstable, and Second agrees. However, considering she was locked up at the slave merchants until he bought her, he thinks it's only natural, and is impressed she can control herself that well. Sylvia believes there's something Yukari desperately wants to say but is forcefully keeping to herself. Second agrees, saying he thought she was afraid of her secret being known. Sylvia asks what he's talking about, and he apologizes, saying he wasn't making fun of her. With a knowing smile, Sylvia says that women sometimes get conflicted feelings, and leads a dozing Iko away. For the first time since they met, Second felt that Sylvia looked cool. He watches her leave. But as she was leaving, a paper napkin got stuck on her rear, and he couldn't help but reconsider his assessment. Sylvia asks Second why they are in a third-class dungeon at this point in time, and he explains that it is for the sake of forming a team. To form a team, one must complete a team formation quest, which requires at least 3 members to clear a third-class dungeon within 2 hours. Any third-class dungeon works, making it an incredibly simple quest. Second reflects that he has not gone through a third-class dungeon in a long time, and he has only ever entered this one, Asiasparn dungeon, once before. At this time, he completely forgot something important. He forgot about Asiasparn's nickname, Blow Away Dungeon. A group of goblins appears before them. Sylvia prepares her magic archery. She unleashes a combination of pawn archery and Opo form of fire, incinerating a goblin. Yukari watches the display of power with a thoughtful expression. Sylvia declares that this is a piece of cake, which Second agrees with, as it is only a third-class dungeon. Iko charges forward, also yelling that it's a piece of cake. Yukari asks her master if this is all right, and Second tells her to just watch. Iko uses gold general shieldsmanship to block the goblins' attacks. The skill sends the entire mob of goblins flying backward. With a highly capable vanguard and rearguard, the party can progress without any danger. Second decides to focus on watching for ambushes and guarding Yukari, as joining in would not help with his teammates' coordination training. They proceed deeper into the cave. They encounter the dungeon's boss, Goblin KO, an enormous but slow monster with low defense. However, the boss is accompanied by 10 Goblin Mage monsters that can cast magic, making it a pain to watch over both at once. Second calculates that with their current firepower, they can take down the KO in 2 hits and the mages in 1, so there is no trouble. Iko asks for their strategy, but Second says there isn't really one this time. Seeing her sparkling eyes, he relents and explains that Iko will aggro the big one in the center and hold it off with Bishop, while he and Sylvia finish it. He instructs Sylvia to do the usual and Yukari to stay by his side, then tells them, let's go. Iko charges forward toward the Goblin KO. The massive goblin swings its club down at her. She blocks the attack with her shield, taking only 3 points of damage and looking surprised. She easily holds off the boss, and Second cheers for her. While Iko tanks, Sylvia takes out the goblin mages, finding the task pretty dull. Second decides to hurry and finish the fight. He fires a castle archery shot that strikes the goblin KO in the chest. Yukari looks on as Second prepares another shot. He used a combination of knight archery and silver general archery, and with just 2 shots, he killed the goblin KO. Sylvia has already cleaned up all of the goblin mage followers, and asks if it's over. Second is puzzled, as the team formation quest hasn't been fulfilled even though the boss and its followers are dead. He remembers that the Goblin KO's corpse will vanish after a set time. As the corpse begins to disappear, one of the goblin mages starts to cast a spell, and Second realizes this is bad. He sees the goblin mage targeting Yukari and curses. He shoves Yukari out of the way just as the spell hits. He is engulfed in a flash of light. He and Yukari are suddenly standing on a beach, and he finally remembers why Asiasparn is called the Blow-Away Dungeon. The goblin mages use a random teleportation spell when they are about to die. Random teleportation forcefully teleports a target to a random location 4 kilometers away from their current position, essentially blowing them out of the dungeon. He recalls reading a post on the Mabayan Woki, an online encyclopedia, about a shocking case of getting blown far away in this dungeon. While the spell is supposed to only send you 4 kilometers away, one submitter was surprisingly blown off by 255 kilometers. The strange phenomenon occurs when a goblin mage invokes random teleportation, while touching the goblin KO's corpse the instant it vanishes. The displacement of teleportation-based sorcery is determined by the MP lost at that moment, so the more MP that is exhausted, the further the displacement. If you add all of the goblin KO's massive MP pool to the teleportation distance, it results in a long-distance teleportation of anywhere from 4 to 255 kilometers. And he had totally forgotten about this incident. It's because superior players don't really get involved with third-class dungeons that are only for beginners. He clenches his fist in frustration. He scratches his head, muttering, "Oh man." Yukari stands with a blank expression while Second looks on, annoyed. Her eyes widen in shock. Second reassures her not to worry, explaining that they were simply teleported away by the goblin. He adds that they are now somewhere 255 kilometers away from Asiasparn. A system notification shows that his team has been formed, a fact he states aloud is the truth that they can't do anything about. He explains that in the end, it seems the goblin mage failed to kill them. He checks his team menu, noting that one of the perks of forming a team is the convenient function of open communication, no matter the distance. He sends a team message, and Sylvia's frantic voice comes through, asking where they went and if they are okay. He tells Sylvia and Iko that they are fine, just displaced by teleportation, and instructs them to wait at the town of Piho, as they are heading back now. When Sylvia asks how long it will be, he estimates 6 or 7 days and tells them to have fun while they are free, much to their surprise. Yukari asks if they are really that far away, and Second confirms it, seeing no point in sugarcoating it. Now that he thinks about it, he's stuck with Yukari for a week, and he decides to take this opportunity to get her to open her heart somehow. He consults a map, realizing that since they are on a coast 255 kilometers from Asiasparn, they must be on the southeastern coast and can reach a port city called Kula by heading north. From Kula, it takes almost a day on horseback to reach Piho, which means their journey to Kula will take almost 5 days on foot. Yukari notes that he seems familiar with the area, but denies it. He asks her why she is being so cold, and she replies that it is just how she was born. He finds her lack of tact unbearable and decides to divert from his plan, resolving to agitate her and get her to reveal her true feelings. He confronts her, asking what secret she is hiding under her shell. She replies that anyone would have a thing or two they desire to keep secret, and he asks if that applies even in a master-servant relationship. She agrees, and he asks if she is going to continue her act and never reveal her past. He sees this as a sign that she is starting to reveal her true colors. He points out that she just admitted to putting up an act. She denies it was a slip of the tongue, claiming she was merely following the conversation, but he presses on, asking if she is nervous. He notices the edge of her mouth twitching, but she denies it. He thinks to himself that his prodding is working and her emotions are starting to well up, so it's time to enter the main topic. He asks if she thinks she can just stay forever arbitrarily deciding to keep quiet and drawing a line between them. He tells her it would probably take a weight off her back to just tell the truth. He reveals that he already has a good idea of her past, as he did some investigation and has heard the name of the executed Duchess, Lucia Icene, before. He tells her to be honest and take off the burden, as it's pointless to keep it a secret. She shouts back that she is hiding it for somebody else's sake. She yells that she is protecting her own kindness and that of Lucia-sama. He replies that he doesn't really get it, and that to him, it just looks like she's doing it for herself. Yukari turns away from him, seething with anger. Second thinks that his mission was somewhat successful. He managed to get her to show her feelings, and even though he might have gone overboard, he had no choice if he wanted to tear down her wall. She turns back and calls him a vulgar man. She says that a superficial man who tries to gain her interest by speaking of the impossibly foolish dream of becoming the world's #1 is not suitable to be her master. She scoffs at the idea of a man who goes through dungeons by having a superior female magic archer and a young beast girl fight on the front lines while he does nothing behind them being the world's #1. She concludes that his stories of random teleportation and the long journey back are all lies, and that he used some dirty tactic to get her alone with him. She is disgusted with the thought that she would need to sleep with him, believing he plans to violate her, but she cannot resist. However, she cannot possibly throw away the life that Lucia-sama granted her so easily. One day ends and the next morning arrives, and he has yet to lay a hand on her. She had been vigilant throughout the night while he watched over the camp, and she knows that if this keeps up, she will eventually reach her limit. On the morning of the third day, after 2 all-nighters, she knows her own limit is approaching. She believes he is a cowardly man, waiting for the moment she loses consciousness, as he did not lay a hand on her the previous night either. Their relationship has deteriorated to the point where they were strictly arguing along the way, and she failed to make proper decisions due to her fatigue. Second realizes that Yukari's actions are completely erratic, and her exaggerated caution towards him is likely due to her worsening fatigue. He is now convinced of something, as she must know that he cannot assault her as long as the slave contract exists. He concludes that Yukari has been brainwashed, likely in a way that makes her extremely cautious towards her master. The culprit is clearly Duchess Lucia Icene, a famous NPC known as the brainwashing granny of Mabayon, who possessed the unique skill brainwashing sorcery. He recalls from the game's story that the only way to dispel this brainwashing is through the manifestation of powerful emotions when one's life is in danger. He thinks that the unique skill feels like it was forcibly prepared just for such a story to develop, and that its effects in the real world would be completely different. As he watches a finally asleep Yukari by the campfire, he knows he has no choice but to invoke those strong feelings in a life-threatening way. He wonders what he should do, knowing that this is too fucking hard. The scene changes to a forest during the day. Suddenly, a sword is plunged into his back. Yukari cries out in shock. A group of thieves surrounds them, one of whom holds Yukari, telling the others not to kill the beautiful girl. The thieves laugh, appraising Yukari and estimating she'd be worth 40 million CL on the black market. Second lies face down on the ground, seemingly dead. He realizes their goal was Yukari, and that they were so hypnotized by the 40 million treasure that they didn't bother to scrounge through his dead corpse's inventory. They must have thought he was already dead, as it's impossible not to die if you get pierced through the heart. But even though he was pierced through the heart by a longsword, his build has insanely high HP, so not even a fifth of it was shaved off. He thinks that while the thieves are unforgivable, this is a great opportunity. Yukari looks on from the side as the scene unfolds. She thinks that for a man who boasted about becoming the world's #1, he died so easily that he was simply too slow. She believes that now she will be treated as a toy by these men, abused as a sex slave, and end up in a cesspool forever. She thinks that this is likely her fate, but she can't help but not want it, feeling that even her previous master would be better than this. Overwhelmed by her situation, she wonders why she is the only one who has to go through something like this. With newfound resolve, her eyes narrow as she decides she doesn't want this fate. A powerful wave of emotion surges through her. At that moment, she felt something warm on her forehead and remembered everything. She recalls her first meeting with her master, Lucia-sama, who told her that from that day on, she would be her shadow and must address her with sama. She remembers how when Lucia-sama would stroke her head, the many rings on her hand would get caught in her hair and hurt a little, but she still loved the warmth of her hand. Lucia-sama was her master and her mother figure. Lucia told her that to remain in the Icene family, she would need to be useful and work, which was her only choice. Having received special assassination training, she acted as Lucia-sama's right-hand shadow, a woman who was good for nothing but assassination. She then remembers her master's final words to her on their last day together. Lucia had called her over, asking to see her forehead for a moment. She had touched her head and told her that it was a good luck charm for her to become happy. The next instant, she had lost consciousness, and when she came to, everything was over. Lucia-sama was executed for plotting a rebellion, and all of her servants were killed. Yukari alone was spared and taken in by the Maurice Company as a slave, her life saved by Lucia-sama. That was her gentle mother, the master whom she respected. As she lies on the ground, blood trickles from her mouth. She realizes that she was brainwashed. Her memories shift to her time at the slave company, where potential buyers were disgusting and she was kicked. One of the men grabs her by the hair. The men mock her, calling her precious merchandise, and laugh as one suggests it's no big deal. She now understands that her idealized memories were just a convenient delusion. She questions her past. Was a person who molded an orphan into an assassin really like a mother? Lucia-sama's gentle smile only ever appeared at that last moment when she touched her forehead. She is tormented by questions, wondering why she was the only one who survived and why her master enslaved and brainwashed her after such an agonizing life of murder. Her pain and confusion erupt into a desperate scream. Back in the present, the thieves are startled by her outburst, wondering if she has gone crazy. With tears streaming down her face, she realizes that the only love she ever clung to was a lie and that she was never loved by anyone. As she tries to bite her tongue, one of the thieves suggests gagging her. Second wonders what he should do. The scene shifts to a hidden building in the forest at night. He watches as 5 men enter the building with a tied-up Yukari. There are 2 lookouts at the entrance, and there's no telling how many more are inside. He knows it will be the end of him if he hesitates, as he cannot lose the top-grade blacksmith egg that he finally found. He fires an arrow from the shadows. He uses a combination of spear archery and night archery to take out both lookouts with a single shot. The 2 men fall to the ground, dead. He acknowledges that he has killed them and knows he won't be able to forget this feeling for a while, but he doesn't have time to contemplate it now. One of the thieves inside hears a noise and asks his companion to check it out. Second readies his sword by the door. 2 men exit the building, and Second moves to intercept them. He cuts them both down in a swift motion. He continues his assault. He kicks down another door, believing Yukari must be behind it. The remaining thieves are shocked by his sudden appearance. He unleashes Gold General Swordsmanship, an omnidirectional spread strike. The attack incapacitates the men, and the leader is shocked that he is still alive. The last of the thieves stands between him and the bound Yukari. He uses Bishop Swordsmanship, a swift and powerful pierce strike, to take down the final enemy. The last thief standing calls him a bloody monster. Yukari looks up at him, tears in her eyes. He smiles, realizing that the caution and hostility in her eyes have vanished. The brainwashing was broken. The last thief, recovering, warns him not to move. He grabs Yukari, holding a knife to her throat and demanding that Second ditch his sword. Second complies, dropping his sword. A fiery blast engulfs the thief from behind. He hadn't noticed the incantation circle under Second's feet. Having been focused on the sword, he pointed upward as a distraction. Second rushes forward, sword in hand. He cuts down the burning thief. He reveals that he used magic swordsmanship, a combination of silver general swordsmanship and coral form of water. He unties Yukari and asks if she is okay. She looks at him, tears still streaming down her face. She tells him that the air is bad here and they should go. He takes her hand and leads her out of the building. The sun rises over the mountains. Second apologizes, saying it was because of his carelessness that Yukari was put in danger. Yukari tells him that she should be the one to genuinely apologize. He asks if she is apologizing for her attitude up until now, and she confirms that is the truth. He tells her that he already knows she was brainwashed. She is shocked, and he explains that it was the effect of Duchess Lucia's brainwashing sorcery, likely to make her cautious of her master. He tells her she can take it slow and that they can talk along the way. They walk along the beach together. Yukari explains that she has been living as an assassin pawn for Duchess Lucia, who adopted her as an orphan but never gave her a name, simply raising her to conduct assassinations. She admits that she was likely brainwashed into thinking she was happy and that she had glorified her days as a shadow. She now understands that it was a cruel brainwashing, a foolish misconception, and that the true despair came after it was broken. With tears in her eyes, she realizes she was never loved by Lucia-sama. She relied on a false love to keep her going, but her master was neither splendid nor kind. She asks to speak about the truth behind her being silenced through brainwashing. Second asks if she means the cause of Duchess Lucia's execution. She confirms, explaining that Lucia was executed for a rebellion she did not commit. It was a complete lie, a scheme by a hostile force led by her enemy, Prime Minister Balmoral. Second asks how she knows that, and she replies that as Lucia-sama's shadow, it was her duty to shed blood in her place. She believes she was brainwashed and restricted from sharing this intel with a new master because it would put Lucia-sama in a bad position. Second asks if he could spare a moment to share what he thinks. Yukari listens. He tells her that while her thinking certainly nails it, he believes Duchess Lucia definitely loved her. Yukari finds this impossible, asking what if the brainwashing was done to protect her. She argues that if that were the case, why would Lucia not give her a name and raise her to be an assassin? Second explains that the acts of not naming her and brainwashing her were done to protect her by creating the image of a pitiful slave forced into assassination. He asks if she was truly happy being the Duchess's slave, a thought that must have crossed her mind at least once, but she denies it, saying it was not an image but her bitter reality. He tells her to listen carefully, explaining a key detail about brainwashing sorcery. A person can only use it once. He explains that the conditions of the sorcery are the same in this world as they were in Mabon, which is why he felt something was out of place and realized this possibility. In her case, the one time Lucia used the spell was to make her cautious towards him, her new master, meaning she truly thought her life as a shadow was happy. He knows this deep analysis is half honest and half a sweet bait, the kind she would unconsciously believe in. Yukari is stunned, thinking that if what he claims is true, then her life, love, and faith were not a mistake. Second asks her why she doesn't break out of jail. He explains that it's a loophole he was thinking of trying after her brainwashing was broken. He clarifies that she will illegally escape her slavery and also get rid of her combat ban. He acknowledges that the Maurice Company will have their eyes on them, but that there are more important things right now. He tells her to just trust him, as he needs her to become his blacksmith no matter what. Yukari thinks his suggestion to prioritize her becoming a blacksmith is ridiculous. She believes that breaking her out of slavery without formally canceling the contract is impossible, as the slave merchant business would not exist otherwise. He asks if she will trust him if he manages to break her out of jail, and she agrees to trust him, though only temporarily. He smiles and tells her to headbutt his chest as hard as she can. She is hesitant, saying that she shouldn't be able to attack him according to the contract. He reassures her that she will be able to and tells her to try as hard as she can. She agrees to try. She closes her eyes and prepares to charge. She slams her head into his chest. She is shocked that she was able to do it, realizing that he wasn't lying and that it was certainly an attack. He smiles and says it looks like she did it. Yukari realizes that with the little fragments of truth he's been imparting, she might have had a great misunderstanding all along, and that he may have never lied to her. She wonders if his stubborn arguments were meant to break her brainwashing, and if he left the dungeon to the other two to train them. She starts to believe he really is planning to become the world's #1. She questions if every single thing he did was for her sake, to raise her as a blacksmith. The thought that he would go this far for her sake makes her reconsider everything. He asks if she trusts him now. She looks at him with tears in her eyes. With a slight blush, she says that just for now, she will trust him, master. The jailbreak was a success. An explanation reveals an old game mechanic. Any subordination on a slave NPC is released when a player bumps heads with them. This mechanic was considered an insanely bad flaw, a minor bug not worth patching in later updates. From their vessel, a companion announces to her master that they are now in sight of the port city of Kula. The journey reaches a quiet interlude. Absorbed in thought, the protagonist looks out over the waves from afar. He ponders the truth of Duchess Lucia Icene's murder, concluding that if Yukari, a person directly involved, recalls it, then it was likely no mistake. The alleged murderer, Prime Minister Bal Moreau, is known as the head of the First Prince's faction, and the protagonist is aware of the prince's twisted personality, sensing a massive, peculiar shadow operation behind it all. As the most influential person in that faction, Moreau could get away with any dirty deed. The protagonist reflects that this world is not identical to the game Mobius Online, recalling that King Baal Cast-All, the First Prince's father, was depicted as a selfish man who always put profit first. Though he never cared for the king NPC in the game, he now understands that if he is to become #1 in this world, the king is someone he absolutely cannot ignore. More pressingly, he worries for his friend, the second Prince Maine, and dislikes seeing him get dragged into a political war. He decides he must investigate, both for the sake of his dream to become the world's best and for the sake of Maine's future. Turning to Yukari, he broaches the subject of the Prime Minister that she had been quiet about. He reassures her, promising to figure something out and asking her to leave it all to him, even if it won't happen immediately. Yukari warns him that he should not speak such frivolent words. Her pointed ear twitches slightly as he watches her reaction. Their journey takes them to the quiet farming town of Piho. There, Sylvia immediately confronts him, agitated and demanding to know where he has been and why he is so late. He notes that her foul mood is just as blatantly bad as it was when they first met a week ago. A moment later, Iko shouts his name, second, and leaps towards him with joy. She slams into him with enough force to make him grunt in surprise. He apologizes to a still fuming Sylvia, who scoffs at his apology and complains about the mountain of problems she faced in his absence. The protagonist and Yukari exchange serious glances, taking in the scene. Sylvia and Yukari then lock eyes, an unspoken tension filling the air between them. Sylvia declares she has something to discuss with the other women, and she leads them away, leaving the protagonist baffled. As a tense, crackling aura erupts between the women, he surmises that this must be a girls-only gathering, something new and surprisingly intense for him. The gathering involves Sylvia calling Yukari a harlot and Yukari retorting that Sylvia's lack of progress is telling, while the protagonist misreads the animosity as friendly banter and is glad they can all get along. Iko, unfazed by the tension, brightly asks what the strategy is. He gently informs the disappointed catgirl that since it's already evening, they won't be raiding any dungeons tonight. Instead, he proposes a strategy meeting over dinner, an idea Iko happily accepts as she takes his hand and they walk off. Later at an inn, he gets straight to the point, declaring that their primary objective is to earn experience. When asked about Yukari's role, he explains the group's goal is to help her gain experience until her blacksmith skill reaches the 9th grade. The plan is to grind in the Limped Fath dungeon, after which Yukari will focus solely on blacksmithing, a plan she humbly accepts. Yukari then asks him if he has decided on a team name, making him realize with a jolt that the teleportation incident made him completely forget. He sheepishly admits he hasn't, prompting an enthusiastic Sylvia to offer a suggestion, which he instantly denies before even hearing it. Sylvia protests, arguing her idea is perfect for a knight who has taken a blood oath, but Yukari calmly offers to hear the suggestion herself. Yukari then points out that since they are not knights, such a name would be unsuitable, a response that makes the protagonist sense a dangerous escalation. Sylvia ignores this and, while chugging a drink, blurts out her suggestion, Chivalric Order 0. Yukari immediately counters with SOS Team, an acronym for their goals, leaving him to wonder why the girls must push everything to such an extreme. Noticing that Iko has fallen asleep on the table, he decides to break the stalemate by letting her choose. Roused from her nap, Iko is asked for a name, but she is too groggy, forcing the protagonist to conclude he must think of one himself. With his companions either drunk, asleep, or distracted, he makes a decision and announces they will be Team Fastest. Yukari soberly notes that such a name could be embarrassing if they aren't the best, but he confidently states it will be fine, as he intends to become the world's #1. He later reflects that he chose a random team name on impulse simply because he was drunk. The very next day, the newly named team stands at the entrance to the second-ranked dungeon, Limped Fath. Inside, Sylvia swings her heavy weapon, unleashing a powerful attack. Iko stands her ground, bracing a massive shield in front of her. A horde of crocodilian and frog-like monsters rushes towards them. He thinks to himself how nice it is to revisit Limped Fath, where they can hunt efficiently and rake in large amounts of experience. At their current pace, he calculates that it wouldn't even take a month for Yukari to acquire all 9 grades for her blacksmith skill, a speed that surprises Yukari herself. This thought triggers a realization. He has not yet checked Yukari's specific skills and ranks. He pulls up her status and sees that among her skills, only pawn archery and knight assassination have reached the grade bracket, both at 1st grade, which he considers a stroke of luck. Yukari watches in amazement as second-rank monsters fall one by one, finally grasping how powerful high-ranking skills truly are. The reason for his luck becomes clear. Yukari hadn't leveled her skills as much as he'd assumed, meaning her high potential allows her to gain experience much faster than he anticipated. He explains to her that once she evolves into an exceptional blacksmith, the party will be able to explore even first-class dungeons with ease. This progress, he says with a smile, brings him much closer to his dream of becoming the world's #1, and he tells her he is counting on her. Yukari acknowledges this, firmly stating that she too will aim to become #1 alongside him. With quiet determination, she clarifies her ambition, to become the world's #1 blacksmith. He gazes at her, his expression unreadable. He internally notes how much she has changed. She once would have called such ambitions frivolous, believing people could not become that strong, but now she has embraced the goal of being world's #1 twice. A small, knowing smile touches his lips. As he sees her return a slight smile of her own, he feels a deep, heartfelt gladness that he made her his comrade. After 2 weeks of exploring the Limped Fath dungeon, the team finally acquires a rock shell shield from a rock tortoise. But this success immediately leads to an inexplicable situation that startles Iko. Yukari and Sylvia try to calm her down, explaining that the shield is only being upgraded, not taken, with Sylvia noting how much more powerful her own bow became after Yukari worked on it. Over the past 2 weeks, Yukari had focused on her ability upgrade skill, finally achieving the 5th grade. At this grade, the skill's success rate skyrockets, making it possible to perform advanced class upgrades up to the second-to-last stage. Yukari asks if she can have the shield to perform the upgrade, but Iko clutches it and shouts a firm no. She tells a glaring Yukari that she looks scary. The protagonist observes that Iko is acting like a cat clinging to a toy and decides to drop the matter for now, seeing no need to hurry. A moment later, a dejected Iko apologizes for her outburst. Sylvia explains to the protagonist that Iko got ahead of herself, fearing that her very first present from him would be taken away. He then hands the shield to Yukari, commanding her to perform a 3rd-stage, VIT-focused upgrade. Yukari completes the task with impressive speed, and he thanks her for her work. He had noticed something lately. Whenever Yukari is happy or embarrassed, the tips of her pointy ears twitch and turn a little red. He quickly takes the upgraded shield and returns it to a grateful Iko. Sylvia then asks if his plan is to change their current adventuring location. She questions the logic of leaving, pointing out how efficiently they are clearing Limpfath and the tens of millions of CL they have earned selling rock tortoise shells. He outlines 3 reasons for the change, the first being that they will get even more experience points in the new location. The second reason is his desire to craft new equipment from materials found in the next dungeon. The boss of their new target dungeon drops a large amount of mithril, a staple material for crafting equipment far superior to what they currently possess. His third reason is that they can make enough gold to drown in. He reveals his ultimate plan, to acquire enough money to build an insane mansion on the outskirts of the royal capital to serve as Team Fastest headquarters. Though he never used the housing system in his past life, he has come to realize its genuine utility in this world and wants a luxurious base of operations. He declares their financial goal is 50 billion CL, which they will earn through a process called mithril alchemy, and asks for his team's thoughts. A stunned Sylvia asks why their goal is such an astronomically high number. He explains simply that since the most expensive estate in the royal capital costs 25 billion CL, their goal must be double that value. The explanation leaves Sylvia speechless with shock. To have the world's #1 estate, he reasons, one cannot consider it so unless they spend at least double the cost of the current most expensive one. He then turns his attention to Yukari, who asks what exactly mithril alchemy is. A diagram illustrates that mithril alchemy is a famous money-making method in Mabayon involving alchemy, mithril, and mithril alloy. He explains the process. They will take mithril ore dropped by the mithril golem boss in the 2nd-rank dungeon Proline, and use blacksmith skills to refine it into pure mithril, which is then manufactured with iron to produce mithril alloy. This mithril alloy is an extremely tough and precious material, created by combining pure mithril and iron at a 1:20 ratio. As he finishes his explanation, Sylvia interrupts him. She points out that the Proline dungeon has not yet been conquered and asks how he knows so much about an unconquered dungeon. He is caught completely off guard, at a loss for words and internally debating whether he should make an excuse or come clean. Sylvia presses further, stating that ever since they met, she has vaguely noticed he has some hidden reason for his unusual knowledge. He admits that she is right and that he has a long, hard-to-believe story behind it. A feeling of guilt washes over him as he anticipates being criticized, and he considers just telling them everything. He decides against it, concluding that his circumstances are far beyond their understanding. He reasons that people fear the unknown, and revealing his secret would only drive him further from his goal of becoming the world's #1. But Sylvia surprises him with a smile, telling him that she trusts him and will accept his circumstances, no matter what they are, if he is willing to share. He is struck by her strength. He recognizes that Sylvia possesses an extremely straightforward and steadfast heart, with the courage to seek the truth even if it could destroy their trust. It is a quality, pure, sincere, strong, and righteous, that he knows he absolutely does not possess and could never emulate. He looks at her directly and speaks her name. He apologizes but firmly states that he will not divulge his secret to anyone, dodging the topic completely. He reflects that he wouldn't be himself if he didn't evade the question, as strictly avoiding such situations is necessary for him to return to his former status as world's #1. A heavy silence descends upon the room. He adds that he cannot even promise to tell her one day, as it is a secret he will be taking to his grave. Sylvia, however, replies that she does not mind at all. She smiles warmly, telling him that if the secret ever becomes a burden, he is free to take back his words whenever he wants. In that moment, he thinks from the bottom of his heart that Sylvia Virginia is a good girl.